Chapter 1351. In order to eliminate the demon's wariness towards junior sister, Master really put in a lot of effort. He understood. Thus, Yelu Jing and added an extra clause to the original order, hoping to achieve the best result. Suddenly, an explosive piece of news spread in the not-so-peaceful Jianghu. Because Ning Xuema was willing to degenerate into a demon, the ancestor personally gave a verbal order to sever his master-disciple relationship with his disciple, Ning Xuema. From now on, he would no longer recognize her as his disciple. He also wanted to personally clean up the sect, and no other sect was allowed to interfere. Ning Xuema's residence, Snowfrost Hall, was also to be demolished and used for other purposes. The ancestor's every move was like a wind vane on this continent. Even if he sneezed, the people of this continent would analyze it with relish for a month, let alone when he gave such an order. Immediately the pot exploded. This news was like sitting on a rocket, quickly spreading to every corner of the continent. Even the furthest rabbits heard about it. Not to mention the other sects that had been paying attention to the Sun-Moon sect's movements. The leaders of these sects were originally discussing how to get rid of the demons and protect the righteous path. They were discussing how to jointly write a petition to the ancestor for the sake of righteousness and justice. They didn't expect to hear this news. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, praising the ancestor in their hearts. As expected of the ancestor, he was both courageous and responsible. He didn't protect his own, and was willing to put righteousness before righteousness to get rid of evil for the people. However, because of the ancestor's verbal order, those righteous sects that were preparing to assassinate Ning Xuema didn't dare to act rashly. If the ancestor wanted to clean up the sect himself, who would dare to interfere? It wasn't like they didn't want to live anymore. Thus, some of the assassination attempts against Ning Xuema were silently stopped before they could even begin. The Jianghu, which had been surging with undercurrents, once again regained its calm. The demon realm, which had been eyeing the Sun-Moon sect covetously, naturally also heard this news. Of course, it also quickly reached Ning Xuema's ears. When Ning Xuema first heard this news, it was at dusk in the afternoon. She and Shui Lan were taking a walk in the garden. She inadvertently heard the two demonesses talking about this gossip. I heard that the sovereign of the Sun-Moon sect has ordered Lady Ning to be expelled from the sect. I heard about it too. It is said that the ancestor is going to personally hunt her down and destroy the side palace she used to live in. It seems like the ancestor is serious this time. Of course it's true. Have you heard that Di Zun once accepted a female disciple called Yi Qingwan? Later, for some unknown reason, she was expelled from the sect. It seems that the ancestor still gives Yi Qingwan face. At the very least, he didn't hunt her down and let her live a comfortable life. He also turns a blind eye to some of her actions. But he doesn't give Miss Ning any face at all. It should be because Miss Ning wants to join our demon and devil realms, right? Although the venerable sovereign usually doesn't care about the affairs of the three realms, he is still an immortal after all. He still has his bottom line. Don't you think it's strange? The ancestor only accepted 2 female disciples. I didn't expect that both of them would be expelled one after the other. It seems that the ancestor was destined not to have female disciples. It's just that the ancestor is too powerful and too dazzling. Any woman would like him. And his 2 female disciples are as beautiful as flowers and jade. It's inevitable that they would have some thoughts about their master. And the ancestor wouldn't do such a dirty thing. Naturally, they were expelled from the sect. Chapter 1352. What you said is wrong. Yi Qingwan was expelled because she had dirty thoughts about Di Zun. It's not like that on our side. She entered the devil realm because she liked our demon emperor. That's why she was expelled by the ancestor. Oh right, I heard that Di Zun actually treated her very special and made many exceptions for her. Could it be that Di Zun really likes her? Impossible. Di Zun has never liked women. What's that saying? Everything is empty. Yes, everything is empty. Some things are hard to say. Alas, this woman is really a disaster. Not only did she hook up with our demon king, but she also has an unclear relationship with Di Zun. I'm afraid that Di Zun will harm our demon world because of this. That would be troublesome. Yes, a woman who looks like a flower vase is sitting on our demon king's seat. She only relies on her good skills in bed to make our Lord Xue fall head over heels for her. Maybe she and her master also have such an affair? These 2 witches were the daughters of the demon race's ministers. They were sent to the demon palace by their father with the intention of giving them to Shui Yilan as concubines. Shui Yilan didn't accept them, so these 2 witches shamelessly stayed in the palace and worked as maids. They tried every possible means to win Shui Yilan's attention. Shui Yilan's thoughts were all on Ning Xuema, which made them feel uncomfortable. They had already made up a lot of bad things about Ning Xuema in their hearts. Now that they got such a piece of gossip, they were naturally very excited. They casually found a big stone in this big garden and thought that it was quite secretive, so they began to gossip. Not a single word left out was heard by Shui Yilan and Ning Xuema, who were passing by nearby. When Shui Yilan heard the first sentence, he frowned and opened his mouth to stop them. Unexpectedly, Ning Xuema waved her hand, indicating that he shouldn't be alarmed. She lifted her skirt and leisurely sat on a big stone nearby to listen. Shui Yilan had no choice but to let her be and sat beside her. In fact, Shui Yilan had long heard rumors about Xinjioli and Ning Xuema severing their master-disciple relationship. He was afraid that Ning Xuema would be upset, so he didn't dare to tell her. He had been thinking about how to tell her tactfully. Now, these two witches could be considered to have helped him. He had been paying attention to Ning Xuema's reaction, but Ning Xuema had been listening with a smile on her face. She had been twirling a red spider lily in her hand, and her face had been very calm. This news didn't seem to have affected her too much. He didn't know if she had really let go or if she was just pretending to be strong. When he heard the words Ning Xuema likes our demon emperor, Shui Yilan's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't help but look at Ning Xuema again. Ning Xuema's lips twitched again, but she still didn't show any expression. After the two witches finished gossiping, they came out with satisfaction. When they raised their heads, they suddenly saw the two people who were sitting on a big rock. They were shocked and looked at each other. Their faces turned red and they pursed their lips. Then they knelt down. Your Majesty the Demon Emperor? Shui Yilan's handsome face turned cold. Gossiping about your master behind his back is a crime punishable by death. After he finished speaking, he glanced at Ning Xuema. He knew that she didn't kill people easily. With her personality, these two witches gossiped about their master. She would probably just reprimand them. However, Ning Xuema looked at the two witches with a smile. She didn't have any intention to interrupt. The two witches thought that their father was more favored in front of Shui Yilan, so they weren't afraid at this time. They even thought that this was an opportunity to attract Shui Yilan's attention, so they immediately apologized to him coquettishly. Their voices were sweet and their eyes were watery. Chapter 1353. Shui Yilan simply wanted to slap these two to death. He glanced at Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema looked at him with a slight smile, as if she was watching a show, as if she wanted to see what he was going to do. Shui Yilan's heart sank. Although Ning Xuema promised him to be the demon emperor and proposed some reform plans, because her prestige was not high, she could not completely implement them. Every time he gave an order, they would only be willing to do it. He paused for a moment, then continued to reprimand, but his words revealed that he would only spare them if Ning Xuema agreed. Fortunately, one of the two witches was a little smarter, and finally remembered to beg Ning Xuema. Because she was angry, this apology was not sincere at all and looked forced. Ning Xuema was still sitting there, holding her chin with her hand and smiling gently. You guys are very happy gossiping about me. Shui Yilan, I seem to be the king of the demon world now, but it seems that they don't take me seriously. Shui Yilan originally had the idea of killing these two witches, but after hearing Ning Xuema's words, he immediately understood. He smiled slightly. Momo, it's my negligence, I will let them remember who their king is. He flicked his finger and the two witches were tied up there. Then he ordered people to ring the assembly bell, in the demon race's conference hall. All the titled demon subjects were divided into two sides. Two demon generals were kneeling there, and kneeling beside them were their daughters, the two talkative witches. Ning Xuema sat on the demon head seat this time, and Shui Yilan sat on the seat slightly below her. Those two demon generals were very capable, and they were very loyal to Shui Yilan. They had contributed a lot to Shui Yilan's success in stabilizing his position as the demon emperor. It was just that they were too unrestrained in their work. Relying on the fact that Shui Yilan usually treated them with special respect, they didn't put anyone in their eyes. This time their daughter had gotten into trouble, but they didn't take it to heart. After Shui Yilan coldly ordered the two witches to confess their crimes, they went to Ning Xuema and said that they were just children who didn't know anything and spoke nonsense. They asked Her Majesty, the Demon Emperor, to be magnanimous and not take it to heart. These kinds of words were meant to downplay this matter and let it pass. The other demon general was even more straightforward as he finally said, the two of you quickly kowtow and apologize to Lord Demon Emperor. Lord Demon Emperor is magnanimous and won't bicker with you. As expected, the two women unwillingly kowtowed to Ning Xuema. Ning Xuema raised her hand, and the two women were stopped by an invisible force. She smiled faintly and finally said, "Without rules, nothing can be accomplished. I wonder, according to the law of the demon realm, what is the punishment for a subject openly discussing the rights and wrongs of an emperor?" When she said this, everyone's heart skipped a beat. In fact, the laws of the demon realm were very strict. If these two women used such words to discuss Shui Yilan, they would be sentenced to having their tongues cut out, and then thrown into the demon realm's Heishui River to be burned to death. The two demon generals probably didn't expect that although Ning Xuema had become the demon emperor, she didn't care about anything in the past few days, would actually ask such a question. Their expressions changed slightly. They couldn't help but raise their heads and see Ning Xuema sitting there. Although there was a faint smile on her charming face, the bottom of her eyes was cold. She clearly didn't do anything, but the aura around her was even stronger than Shui Yilan's. That oppressive aura made the two experienced demon generals anxious. Their faces turned green and white and they didn't dare to answer. Chapter 1354. Shui Yilan rubbed his chin as a hint of relief flashed through his eyes. Even in his previous life, his Momo did not have such a strong aura. It seemed that after being dispirited for so long, she was finally going to recover. "Her Majesty the Demon King is asking you a question. Are you afraid or disdainful to answer?" Shui Yilan asked as he stared at the two of them. The smile on his face had also turned cold. The two demons were also old foxes who had been in the Jianghu for a long time. Now that things had developed to this point, the two of them understood that the new Demon King was using them as bait to establish her might. These two witches were blind and had bumped into the muzzle of the gun. At this point they could no longer protect their daughter. Otherwise they would be implicated and punished as well. The two demons did not have a deep relationship with their daughter to begin with. At this time they naturally chose to abandon the rook to protect the king. They immediately bowed respectfully to Ning Xuema. "Your Majesty, it is our fault for not teaching our daughter properly and offending your Majesty's might. We will act according to the laws of the demon race and punish the two of them severely." The two witches who were still unconcerned and rolled their eyes at Ning Xuema earlier were dragged away. When they were dragged away they wailed like ghosts and howled like wolves. They desperately begged in the direction where Ning Xuema was sitting. This time they were sincere and did not add any lies. Unfortunately, it was already too late. This small episode passed just like that. The show of killing the chicken to scare the monkey finally made the demons understand who was the real master of the demon realm. They also understood that this delicate-looking little girl was not to be trifled with. Once they offended her, even the heavenly king would be punished. Thus the demons became much more obedient. They were more respectful towards Ning Xuema and no longer treated her as a dispensable puppet. Ning Xuema was also strange. She still did things her own way. Although she was the demon king, she was still like before. Every day she spent more time cultivating and less time coming out. Over time the demons in the demon realm also knew a rule. This demon king did not like to care about the matters of the demon realm. Usually, as long as they did not provoke her, they could still live their lives peacefully. The one who was truly in charge was still Shui Yilan. Thus the devil assembly regained their joy. Although the demon realm was rich in demon chi, it was extremely scarce in resources. Therefore the demons basically had to go out and steal for food and clothing. They were particular about the principle of taking things. Killing and arson were easier and more common than eating cabbage. This naturally attracted the pursuit of human cultivators. Because the devil realm was in decline now, the devil realm was often chased by the other party when they were outside. There were many people who lost their lives for a nice robe or a jar of good wine. Although the demonic world was called the demonic world, the demonic world's demonic world's demonic world's demonic world's demonic world was still rather miserable. The demons lived a life where there was no tomorrow, so they muddled along. Generally, they held the attitude that if there was wine today they would drink in the morning, and if there was no wine tomorrow they would be worn out. It was completely different from the demons of the past. After Ning Xuema ascended to the position of the demon king, although she did not care much, she occasionally issued orders to reform some of the demons' shortcomings. At first, the demons could not accept it, but later on they found that once it was implemented, there were actually many benefits. For example, the devil realm was rich in a kind of obsidian. This kind of stone could be sold for a lot of money in the human realm. However, the demons guarded this treasure mountain but could not sell it. Because most of the demons had demon chi, they were easily recognized by human cultivators. If they sold this kind of thing from the devil realm, it was simply a living signboard. Before a stone could be sold, it would attract the pursuit of human cultivators. Chapter 1355. The cultivators in the human world did not dare to come to the demon realm to pick up this kind of stone. This was the territory of the demons. If they came in, they would only be eaten alive by the demons. However, Ning Xuema came up with an idea. She ordered dozens of honest villagers to enter the demon realm to dig up this kind of stone. The premise was that they had to bring enough daily necessities to exchange when they came in. When the first batch of villagers carried a load full of daily necessities into the demon realm, the demons were practically drooling on both sides of the road. They were used to eating humans. When they saw these people come in voluntarily, it was like seeing fat sheep walking in front of them. Because of Ning Xuema's strict order, the demons did not dare to act recklessly. Seeing that the daily necessities did not have to be snatched this time and came automatically, they still endured it. The price set by Ning Xuema was very fair. After these villagers brought the corresponding amount of obsidian out and sold it, they would definitely make a profit. After these villagers risked their lives to come in, they found that this was a lucrative job. Later on, they did not need to be invited and came on their own. Because the villagers went out to sell the obsidian, even if the cultivators saw them, they could not do anything to these villagers. Therefore, the obsidian was successfully sold, and the daily necessities sent into the demon realm naturally became more and more abundant. Ning Xuema divided these demons. Some were mining, some were inspecting the stones, some were checking the quality of daily necessities, and some were receiving goods. Gradually, a one-stop service was formed. Of course, the daily necessities obtained were still distributed according to the work they did. This was just a rough way of saying it. There was still a very detailed division of labor. It would not be described here one by one, or it would become a farming story. In short, after a series of reforms by Ning Xuema, the demons found that they no longer had to be hunted down by human cultivators to snatch a bone. They relied on this obsidian mountain to be self-sufficient. The probability of being hunted down was greatly reduced. Ning Xuema's management system was very refreshing for the demons, and they did get a lot of benefits. Therefore, unknowingly, their previous rejection of Ning Xuema changed to acceptance. They were also willing to implement the rules that she had promulgated. 2 months. In just 2 months, the atmosphere in the demon realm changed greatly. People died for wealth and birds died for food. When the basic necessities of life were well taken care of, even the demons were too lazy to go out and do evil. It was not like they had nothing better to do. What's the latest news? Shinjuli was sitting under a big tree with fiery red leaves, drawing with his brush. The maple leaves in the painting were like fire, depicting the current scenery. Opposite him, Yelu Jing, and reported to him, "Junior sister's method is very good. It made those devils behave a lot. Recently the devil realm has been very peaceful. The devils don't come out to do as much evil." Shinjuli gently turned a chess piece on his fingertips and nodded slightly. "What about the other sects?" "Yes, the devil realm is so peaceful that other sects don't know what they're doing, so they try to pretend to be ordinary villagers and sneak in to take a look. However, the number of villagers who can enter the devil realm is fixed, and the devils inside have their own ways to identify them. Those sect elders who know how to disguise themselves as one of them were recognized at the entrance. If he didn't run fast enough, he would have been eaten alive by the devils. Not only that, the villager he disguised as was permanently disqualified from entering the devil realm. The other villagers are afraid that if another disciple of a cultivation sect impersonates them, they will lose the opportunity to make a fortune, so they all voluntarily leave secret signals to the devil realm's entrance control. Only when all the secret signals match can they enter. Chapter 1356. Shinjuli asked a few more questions and Yelu Jing, and reported them to him one by one. Recently, his master had been very concerned about the demon realm, so Yelu Jing, and used all his information networks to inquire about the demon realm. This way he could answer his master's daily questions. Yelu Jing, and had secretly complained that his master didn't care about anything for many years. He secretly sighed. He had been the ancestor's disciple for so long, but the chances to see his master's face were pitifully few. He only saw him 3 to 5 times a year. Now he didn't complain. The frequency of him seeing his master was so high that it made people's hair stand on end. He could see him once a day. Before leaving Yelu Jing, and suddenly thought of something. "Master, 2 months ago, the wedding items that master ordered disciple to prepare, burn them." Shinjuli's short 3 words ended the fate of that batch of things. "Yes." Yelu Jing, and agreed. He didn't say anything else and turned to leave. After taking a few steps, he seemed to think of something again. He turned to look at his master, wanting to say something but hesitated. Shinjuli was impatient. "What is it now?" "A disciple heard a rumor." Little junior sister and Shui Yilan recently left the demon realm to play. Pa. A drop of ink fell on the rice paper. He originally wanted to draw a leaf, but it dyed a mountain rock red, like blood. Shinjuli's brush paused and casually dyed the drop of ink. Where did they go? This? I haven't found out yet. Disciple is sending people to investigate. Shinjuli didn't say anything else and continued to draw with his head bowed. Yelu Jing and saw his brush move like a dragon and finally couldn't help but say, Master, I heard from the demon realm that their good news is near. The demons have already begun to prepare for their wedding. Shinjuli's brush paused for a moment, and a big red mark appeared on the red maple tree that was originally dense with leaves. Yelu Jing and pretended not to see the red maple tree that had been drawn out of shape and finally left. Shinjuli stared at the drawing on the stone table for a moment. The red maple tree in front of him seemed to have turned into a girl's red dress. The wind blew and the girl's dress danced. The girl's smile was like a flower as she played the pipa. He froze for a moment. This image had suddenly appeared in his mind and then disappeared. When he wanted to grab it, it had disappeared without a trace. He understood that this should be a scene of him and Ning Xuema together before he lost his memory. It was just an image and there was no way to connect the two. In the past, when he lost his memory, he would never remember the past. This time, some images flashed through his mind. Although he couldn't connect them together, they were all about Ning Xuema. 3,000 years ago, he was injured by Shui Yimo, causing the death of his beloved disciple, Long Chuan, and losing half of the immortal world. Not long after he woke up from his grief, he sealed away all his memories of Shui Yimo. He didn't expect that the seal would automatically split and become Wu Mo. His injuries were too severe and he needed to sleep for 10 years to recuperate. Before he fell asleep, in order to prevent himself from repeating the same mistakes, he ordered that he would sleep once every 900 years. After he woke up, he would forget all the oracles from his previous life. He slept like this again and again, and he had long forgotten why he had ordered this kind of oracles in the first place. When Wu Mo died, the memories from 3,000 years ago came back. Only then did he remember everything. That injury also left him with the problem of returning to his youth once every 18 years. He had to cultivate on the 9th peak of Heavenly Book Mountain for 3 days before he could return to normal. Because he had lost all his previous memories, he didn't know where this strange injury came from. Chapter 1357. The reason why Shui Yimo was so attentive to him was because she wanted something. He already knew this, but he didn't know what she wanted. At first he didn't care about her and was too lazy to ask, but later he was too deep in the mud to ask. He was born as a god. Although he appeared to be indifferent, he was extremely conceited. He felt that since he had fallen in love with this little fox, then with his ability he could also make Shui Yimo fall in love with him and never return to the demon world. Shui Yimo's body was special. He understood that his power would decrease if he married her. However, he relied on his high power and didn't care about the danger of temporarily turning into a human for 3 years. He wantonly made love with her, even washing her hands and making soup for her, living the life of an ordinary husband and wife with her. She often said that she didn't have a childhood, so he spent 30% of his power to build a jellyfish castle for her. He never knew that he would spoil a girl so much. He couldn't wait to bring the whole world to her just to make her smile. He never knew that he could love someone so much that he forgot his identity as a god and did many things that were beneath his godhood. He had eyes and ears everywhere. Some things didn't need to be deliberately asked to know. Before he married Shui Yimo, he knew that she was the princess of the demon world, the successor of the demon ancestor. And Shui Yilan, who was injured by his palm, was her follower. The two were inseparable in the demon world. Shui Yilan's red robe left a deep impression on him. Therefore, after he learned about the relationship between Shui Yimo and Shui Yilan, he subconsciously hated the color red. Even if he got married, he didn't want to wear a wedding robe. He thought that he would hold her hand for the rest of his life. Who would have thought that she would personally cut open his heart for another man? The more he loved her at that time, the more he was hurt after she betrayed him. He was a god. The woman who married him 3,000 years ago didn't need to go through any tribulation because even if there was one, he could easily block it. 3,000 years later, this rule was made after he was injured by Shui Yimo. He was afraid that he would fall in love with a witch in the future, so he made this rule. Witches couldn't go through the real tribulation. He had arranged everything very well, and the past 3,000 years had been peaceful and stable. But he didn't expect that 3,000 years later she would turn into Ning Xuema and come to his side, and he fell in love with her once again. After going around in circles, the three of them bumped into each other again. This was really a sin. His fingers unconsciously tightened around the brush, and his eyelashes drooped. Suddenly, with a crack, the brush snapped and fell to the ground. The painting on the table also spontaneously combusted, turning into ashes in the blink of an eye. When the wind blew, not a single trace was left behind. These days, Shuilan brought Ning Xuema to many beautiful places in different spacetimes. For example, the flower immortal country's 10,000-ly sea of flowers. The entire world was a sea of flowers. Countless beautiful flowers bloomed in a vigorous manner. Beautiful and exquisite fairies shuttled through the flowers. Countless streams of light sprinkled down, causing the flowers to glow even in the dark night. For example, the crystal sea of the Water Dream Nation was like a piece of crystal clear jade, so clear that one could see the bottom. Ning Xuema and Shuilan held hands and hovered above the sea. They could clearly see the beautiful and enchanting mermaids in the depths of the sea. She also went to many places and saw beautiful scenery that she had never seen before. Shuilan could clearly feel that Ning Xuema's mood was gradually improving. Her eyes were no longer dark and gloomy, and they began to show true brilliance. Chapter 1358. Her attitude towards him was no longer so repulsive. At first, she would freeze when he held her hand, but now, she no longer rejected his embrace. Shuilan finally understood that if he treated Ning Xuema forcefully, she would only feel disgusted and run away. He had to slowly influence her and make her willing to be with him. Somewhere the sun slowly sank below the surface of the sea. The setting sun melted the gold and the evening clouds merged together. Large clouds of fire burned continuously in the sky, reflecting the entire sea with a golden red color. Shuilan and Ning Xuema were still dressed in red, and they danced vigorously in the sea breeze. Ning Xuema looked at the distant sea in a daze. Shuilan looked at her walking beside him, and his heart was filled with an indescribable sense of satisfaction. He tilted his head and asked, "Momo, what are you thinking about?" Ning Xuema withdrew her gaze and said indifferently, "Nothing." The two of them walked on the beach for a long time, until the golden crow sank into the sea. The bright moon slowly rose from where the water met the sky, and the stars in the sky were like a plate of loose sand, slowly flowing in the sky. Shuilan looked at Ning Xuema, and his lips curved into a smile. He said meaningfully, "Momo, isn't it wonderful to have someone accompany you and play with you?" Ning Xuema glanced at him, revealing a smile that was not a smile. "Lan Shan, what do you want to say?" Shuilan's heart suddenly beat faster. He tried hard to maintain the expression on his face, and tried to sound as calm as possible. "Momo, I'll accompany you for a long time in the future. What do you think?" After saying this, he stared at Ning Xuema, like a child waiting for the results of an exam. Ning Xuema looked at the distant sea and the wisps of sea fog. She was silent for a long time. As time passed, Shuilan's heart sank. Just as his heart was about to sink to the bottom of the valley, Ning Xuema turned her head with a faint smile on her lips. "You can try." Shuilan's heart, which had fallen to rock bottom, instantly rose to heaven. He felt like he was in a dream. His eyes were astonishingly bright. He looked at Ning Xuema for a long time without saying anything. Suddenly, he somersaulted in the air and smiled like a flower. "Okay, let's give it a try." Ning Xuema looked at his bright eyes, and her heart suddenly sank. Shuilan's feelings for her were too heavy for her to bear. When Ning Xuema saw the familiar scenery on the street, her body stiffened slightly. Why did Shuilan bring her to the immortal nation? Looking at the exquisite carvings and paintings everywhere, countless memories uncontrollably rushed into her mind. Ning Xuema closed her eyes. When Shuilan's eyes swept over her, she returned to her indifferent appearance. Shuilan didn't want to come here, but he always wanted to give Ning Xuema a gift. Shenjuli had once given her a pair of email piercers, but she had already thrown them back. Now Ning Xuema didn't even have a good weapon. If he gave her a weapon made of moonlight iron, she would definitely be very happy, right? But he didn't plan on telling Ning Xuema about this. He wanted to give her a pleasant surprise. The two of them first went to the tea house to drink a pot of fragrant tea. Then they went to the Enichang pavilion to buy a lot of clothes. Shuilan was finally satisfied as he left with Ning Xuema. As long as Ning Xuema's eyes stopped on something, he would spend a lot of money to buy it. Now he added a pile of clothes. Chapter 1359. Shuilan had never thought that other than weapons, poisons, and charms would appear in his storage space. But now, looking at these small things, he was even happier than if he had obtained a peerless weapon. This was because he had already obtained a rare treasure. Whatever else was left was not worth mentioning. He only wanted to pamper Momo. The two slowly walked out of the city. There were fewer and fewer people, and the scenery became more and more beautiful. Shui Yilan brought Ning Xuema around the outskirts of the city for a long time, as if he was looking for something. After a while he finally stopped at a place. This was a relatively spacious area facing the sun. Behind it was a lush green mountain facing the rippling water. There were a few willow trees planted by the water, and the willow leaves gently danced on the water. On the soft green grass, cute little animals would often run by. Shui Yilan raised his hand, and the little animals were forcefully thrown back into the forest. A small two-story building rose from the ground. It was exquisite and beautiful. There was a fence around the building blocking the curious little animals outside. Shui Yilan held Ning Xuema's hand and walked into the building. He smiled faintly and said, "The distant mountain is beautiful and the nearby water is smoky. Momo, let's live here in seclusion for a while, okay?" Ning Xuema looked at the fresh and unique scenery around her and nodded. The next morning Shui Yilan disappeared. When Ning Xuema woke up, she saw a steaming hot meal and a note on the table. The note said, "Momo, I'll be back in the evening. Don't worry." Ning Xuema stared blankly at the note for a while. Suddenly, the corner of her lips curled up slightly. She sat down and began to eat. This should be the food that Shui Yilan cooked. It was very delicious. Once some things became a habit, she would get used to it. She should be able to get used to it quickly. After Ning Xuema finished eating, she began to meditate and cultivate. She cultivated for an entire day. Shui Yilan had been slaughtering dragons on Mount Yuehua for an entire day, but he hadn't even found a single piece of moonlight iron. He was already restless, and now he was even more upset. He wondered if Momo had stayed at home obediently. He didn't set up any barriers around the hut, nor did he restrict Ning Xuema's movements. He allowed her to come and go as she pleased. This was actually a bold test of his. He wanted to see if Momo was truly with him. That night at the seaside, Momo's response to his bold confession was a pleasant surprise. It made him feel that it was unreal. He was afraid that she was just stalling for time. Once he let his guard down, she would leave and never come back. Therefore, after Ning Xuema agreed to try it with him, he became even more frightened. He was on tenterhooks every night. The time he spent with Ning Xuema was too beautiful and dreamy, which made him feel unreal. He was afraid that when he woke up, he would wake up from his dream and become a lonely person again. This sweet fear had been tormenting him for a long time. It made his heart more and more sensitive. When it came to flirting, he was worthy of being called a veteran in the field of flowers. However, when it came to seriously pursuing a person, he really had no experience. This made him even more terrified. Even if he presented the best things to Ning Xuema, he still felt that they were not enough. It wasn't until he accidentally saw a love story in the human world. It was written that if you love someone, you have to believe in that person. He felt that he seemed to have understood something. In order to understand love more thoroughly and understand how to pursue a person better, Shui Yilan had bought countless books and read them every night by burning oil in the lamp. Chapter 1360. This situation persisted until Ning Xuema inadvertently saw it and stopped. Because he still couldn't forget Ning Xuema's surprised and funny expression at that time. For the first time in his life he felt embarrassed, so he burned the small book with a wooden face. But he had already memorized the contents of the book. If he loved her, he had to believe in her. Shui Yilan decided that he would try to believe in Ning Xuema, believe that she was sincerely with him. So, he gave her enough freedom and respect. Her injuries had already healed. In a day, if she wanted to leave, she had enough opportunities to run away. She also had enough time to run to a place where he could never find her again. Would she have already taken the opportunity to leave him and run far away? Shui Yilan was distracted, and his robe was almost burned by the moonlight pterosaur's flame. His eyes darkened, and he raised his hand to deal with the moonlight pterosaur. There was still no moonlight iron. Thinking that Ning Xuema might have left him and gone to a place he didn't know, Shui Yilan's mood became even more irritable. Looking at the sky, the moon was already hanging in the sky. Unable to bear it anymore, his figure flashed and turned into a red light flying towards the small house. What if Momo really left? This thought lingered in his heart, making his heart slightly tighten. As he got closer and closer to the small house, his heart became more and more tense and his heart beat like a drum. Then he would dig 3 feet into the ground to find Ning Xuema again, and lock her in the barrier, not letting her have the chance to leave him again. Shui Yilan's eyes flashed with a red light, but as if he suddenly thought of something, his eyes darkened. He had once locked Ning Xuema up for 10 years, and in exchange she only hated him and fled. So he couldn't lock her up, he had to slowly reform her. Even if she left this time, he could find her and accompany her everywhere. It didn't matter if she left early. He could catch up with her and join her. Although he tried his best to comfort himself, his heart still sank when he saw the dark building without a single light. Did Momo really leave? Did she really abandon him and leave? His heart was about to sink into icy water. Lifting his feet, he stiffly approached the small building. Not in the courtyard, not in the hall, not in the training room, not in his own room. Shui Yilan searched through all the rooms except for Ning Xuema's bedroom on the second floor. He slowly walked up to the second floor. His footsteps were so light that there was no sound. He gently pulled open the door to Ning Xuema's bedroom, and what greeted him was darkness. The bedding was neatly placed at the head of the bed, and there was no trace of heat. Obviously, Ning Xuema had been gone for a long time. She must have left without hesitation after he left. No matter how well he treated her, as soon as he left for a short while, she would leave him without any reluctance, making him unable to find her again. Momo, how can you be so cruel? Shui Yilan's heart ached terribly. He looked at the empty bed and sorrow flooded him like a tide. Where should he go to find her? In a day's time she might have already gone to another time and space. In this vast sea of people, where should he go to find her? After he found her, would she abandon him again? Shui Yilan felt that all his strength had been sucked away. His body swayed, and under the moonlight, his face became even paler, almost without any blood. Chapter 1361. Shui Yilan felt as if all his energy had been sucked out of him. His body swayed, and under the moonlight, his face became increasingly pale, almost devoid of blood. Suddenly someone patted him on the shoulder. Startled, he quickly turned around and saw Ning Xuema's puzzled face. Lanshan, you're back. What are you doing standing here? Ning Xuema had been cultivating in the practice room for a day. After that, she went out for a stroll. When she returned to her bedroom, she saw someone standing in front of her bed. She thought it was a thief and was about to take care of him when she saw that it was Shui Yilan. She's back? She didn't abandon him and run away? Shui Yilan looked at her for a long time without saying anything. At that moment he almost cried tears of joy. He pulled Ning Xuema into his arms and hugged her tightly. Momo, I thought you. Where did you go? Ning Xuema was caught off guard and was pulled into his arms. Her body stiffened slightly. When she heard his words, she sighed in her heart. Did Shui Yilan think that she took the opportunity to leave? Where could she go now? Moreover, she had already promised to try it out with Shui Yilan. She wouldn't go back on her word. Thus, Ning Xuema patted Shui Yilan's back and said helplessly, I just went out for a stroll. Of course I'll come back. Shui Yilan hugged her for a long time before letting go. He raised his hand to tidy up her long hair. His eyes shone brightly. And I believe you. From now on, I'll believe every word you say. 'Cause I love you. The atmosphere was a little ambiguous. Shui Yilan looked at Ning Xuema in his arms as if he was looking at a lost treasure. After looking at her for a long time, the desire to kiss her grew stronger. He tried to slowly kiss her. Ning Xuema looked at Shui Yilan's handsome face that was gradually enlarging. She closed her eyes and her body became more and more stiff. There was a voice in her heart that wanted to run away, but her rationality reminded her that she wanted to try with Shui Yilan. His lips were getting closer and closer to her. Shui Yilan opened his eyes and saw the unnatural expression on Ning Xuema's face. Her body was as stiff as a block of wood. A hint of disappointment flashed across his eyes. He sighed inwardly and finally stopped. In the end, he patted her head and said in a low and hoarse voice, Momo, rest early. Call me if you need anything. He turned around and left. After Shui Yilan left, Ning Xuema's body slowly relaxed. She looked at Shui Yilan's departing figure with a complicated look in her eyes. In the end, she quietly climbed onto the bed and pulled the blanket over herself to sleep. He slept all the way until dawn. When she woke up again, she was greeted by a steaming hot meal and a note. I'll be back in the evening. Don't miss me. If you're bored, go out for a walk. Go out and relax. Ning Xuema looked at the note with a trace of doubt in her heart. Where did Shui Yilan go? However, that doubt was just a drop in the ocean. It disappeared without a trace. After Ning Xuema finished her meal, she went downstairs to cultivate. She didn't know why, but she felt uneasy today. After meditating for less than 2 hours, she couldn't calm her heart down. She took a deep breath and decided to go out for a walk. Ning Xuema walked on the street and looked at the bustling crowd. She felt a sense of absent-mindedness and some memories couldn't help but surge up. Unknowingly, she walked to the forge that used to be. She needed to choose a suitable weapon for herself. She couldn't always fight with her bare hands. The shop owner was still that cool young man. However, he was much friendlier this time. Chapter 1362. It was clear that he had recognized Ning Xuema. He curiously asked, "Where is the great god that accompanied you last time?" Ning Xuema's footsteps paused. After a while she lightly said, "He's dead." The youth choked. Ning Xuema suddenly felt a bit annoyed. None of the weapons were pleasing to her eyes, so she decided to leave. The youth hurriedly opened his mouth. "Do you want to see the new weapons that I made?" Ning Xuema's footsteps paused and she turned around. The youth went into the room and after a while, he came out with a heavy rectangular box. The box was completely black and she did not know what material it was made of. It was so dark that it did not reflect any light at all. Ning Xuema suddenly felt a bit curious. She took a few steps forward and waited for the youth to open the box. The youth secretly let out a sigh of relief. He carefully opened the box. It was a pair of email piercers. Ning Xuema instantly froze. She looked at the email piercers that were flowing with colorful lights and was slightly stunned. The youth saw that her expression was a bit strange and hurriedly began to introduce, "I spent a lot of effort to make this from a whole piece of moonlight iron. It can cut through iron like mud and it can cut through hair. It is a rare treasure. Since I'm familiar with you, I can give you a discount. 80,000 crystal beads." 80,000 crystal beads for this divine weapon was really worth it. This pair of email piercers, whether it was the pattern or the carving, it was different from the previous pair. But it was still a rare treasure. But Ning Xuema already had a shadow over the email piercers. As long as she saw the email piercers, she could not help but think of the despair and pain that she felt on the day they broke up. The email piercers were like a thorn that deeply pierced into her heart. She could not touch it. She did not even like daggers that were similar to the email piercers, let alone an authentic one. She did not even want to look at the email piercers, let alone buy them. "I don't want it." She only said these two words and turned around to leave. The young blacksmith thought that she thought it was too expensive, so he shouted from behind, 50,000. 50,000 no less. Ning Xuema did not stop walking. Just as she was about to walk out of the armament manual, the young blacksmith ran in front of her with a pair of email piercers. "This pair of email piercers is destined to be with you. I've also met you twice, so I'll give it to you." The email piercers seemed to light up, but it was only for a moment. He was actually giving it away for free? She wouldn't want it even if it was given to her for free. Ning Xuema looked at him and finally opened her mouth. Her tone was a little indifferent. "Sorry, I'm not interested." "Excuse me." Her expression was ice cold, and her body was surrounded by cold air. The young blacksmith was frozen in place, unable to say anything else. She walked around the young man and turned to leave. The young blacksmith was speechless. After Ning Xuema walked far away, he looked at the email piercer in his hand and sighed. "It's not that I don't want to help you, but this girl really doesn't want to accept." A man in white came out from the inner room. He was wearing a wide robe with flowing cloud patterns, and his icy blue eyes were like the deepest blue sea. It was Shinjioli. The young man's hand was empty, and the pair of email piercers was in Shinjioli's hand. He looked at the pair of email piercers and his eyes were dark. The conversation just now was still echoing in his mind. "Where's the great master who came with you?" "Dead." The words died without any sorrow or joy, were like a sharp sword that ruthlessly pierced through his heart. Was he already dead in her heart? Did she hate him so much now? Chapter 1363. When she mentioned it, she would just say dead, and deal with it. What was even more unexpected was that she would even dislike the email piercer. The email piercer in his hand let out a low cry as if it was crying. It didn't expect that even if it changed into a more beautiful design, its master wouldn't like it anymore. Shinjioli watched as Ning Xuema walked away. His eyes moved and in the end, his figure slowly disappeared as he quietly followed her. Ning Xuema was in a bad mood after coming out of the weapon shop. She couldn't help but think about the past. When she saw the email piercers, her memories surged like a flood that broke through the dam. Every scene was filled with the beautiful and warm memories of the past. However, the past was the past after all. The warmth of the past was nothing more than a big joke in today's world. The emotions that were usually well hidden began to surge, giving her the urge to destroy everything. Ning Xuema strolled on the streets of the Immortal Kingdom. She looked at the exquisite pavilions on both sides and tried her best to suppress the desire to destroy. It was unknown when it started to drizzle. The passers-by were holding small umbrellas and walking in a hurry. There were fewer people like Ning Xuema leisurely strolling on the streets. Ning Xuema also bought a simple and elegant sky blue paper umbrella. She held it as she walked slowly. She strolled around and unknowingly walked onto Lover's Bridge. Looking at the same love locks on the bridge and the names on the same love locks, she curled her lips slightly, revealing a faint mocking smile. It was unknown whether she was laughing at herself or at others. Her fingers slowly slid across the bronze locks as if she was looking for something. Suddenly her white jade-like fingers stopped on a jade lock. Ning Xuema's fingers paused for a moment before she silently lifted the beautiful jade lock. She stared at the jade lock for a long time without a trace of emotion on her face. However, in the depths of her eyes, there were layers of ripples. Looking at the two beautiful names on the lock, Ning Xuema's hands trembled slightly. Ning Xuema Shinjiuli. There was a heart in the middle, representing love. Ning Xuema stared at the jade lock absent-mindedly. She was caught off guard and fell into the trap of memories. At that time, Shinjiuli hadn't lost his memories. He brought her to the immortal kingdom to play and passed by Lover's Bridge. Guru, can we write our names down too? Ning Xuema bought a bronze lock and was about to carve it with a small carving knife. Shinjiuli flicked his sleeve and the lock fell into the water. Ning Xuema glared at him. Shinjiuli looked at her coldly and suddenly placed something in her palm. Ning Xuema opened her hand and saw a sparkling and translucent jade lock lying quietly in her palm. Shinjiuli's voice rang out beside her ear, "That one is too ugly." Ning Xuema, the Almighty was indeed the Almighty. He wanted the best for everything. She carved the names of the two people together stroke by stroke and connected them with a big heart in the middle. Ning Xuema locked the lock on the bridge and looked at the jade lock worriedly. If such a peerless jade lock was placed on this bridge, would it be stolen by someone? Shinjiuli's fingers moved slightly and the jade lock flashed with white light. It turned into a normal bronze lock. Ning Xuema looked at Shinjiuli speechlessly. Shinjiuli looked back at her with a puzzled expression. He had set up an eternal enchantment for the lock. Was there something wrong with that? Ning Xuema looked at the jade lock and found it funny. Even if the bridge collapsed, the lock would be bound to it. Chapter 1364. If the thief wanted to steal the jade, he would have to take the bridge away. Memories were like poisonous wine. At first it was fragrant, but later, it eroded the bones and overwhelmed the soul. A drop of rain fell on the jade lock and the water droplets splashed. Ning Xuema suddenly came back to her senses. She looked at the jade lock and showed a touch of mockery. With a wave of her sleeve, the jade lock broke and fell into the rippling lake water. With a plop sound, countless fishes scattered in fright and hid in the lotus leaves one after another. Ning Xuema stood on the bridge and held an umbrella. She stood there quietly for a long time. The fishes under the bridge shuttled back and forth between the lotus leaves. The drizzle fell into the water, causing the water to ripple. The lake water rippled and could not calm down. Ning Xuema's eyes seemed to have a pool of lake water. The ripples could not be calmed down. After a while she slowly left. Shinjiuli stood under a tree and quietly looked at the figure on the bridge. The person on the bridge was wearing a red dress that fluttered in the wind. Under the sky blue paper umbrella was her long hair that was as black as ink. In the hazy drizzle, there were wisps of milky white smoke lingering around her body. She was like a fairy that had accidentally landed in the mortal world. She was so beautiful that she was ethereal. He looked at the person on the bridge for as long as she stood there. There was a dense pain in his heart that was becoming a death. He knew that this woman did not have a heart. Perhaps she did not love him. He knew that he should let go, but he could not let go. For the first time in his life he tasted the feeling of wanting to let go but not being able to. He did not know what to do. Reason told him that they were two existences that should not have intersected. Only when they truly let go would it be beneficial for both of them. However, reason was reason. Emotion was emotion. She was like a disaster for him. He could not get over it in a short time. He did not know why he was like a little thief and secretly followed behind her. He only knew that from the moment they met again, his heart unconsciously moved closer to her and followed her footsteps. Looking at her standing on the bridge for so long, his fingertips curled slightly. He subconsciously wanted to support her with an enchantment, but he resisted. Anger surged in the depths of his eyes. On the surface, she seemed to have recovered, but she had been soaked in the demon-vanquishing soup after all. The injury she had sustained was a wound to her soul. Even if this kind of injury didn't show on the surface, it was like a broken porcelain that was still intact. It couldn't withstand even the slightest breeze. An ordinary cold might be enough to take her life. Getting caught in the rain was the stupidest thing to do. If it was in the past, he might have already opened his mouth to teach her a lesson. However, he was in no position to do so now, therefore he could only stand there not knowing what to do. Ning Xuema finally left slowly. Shen Jili silently walked onto the bridge and stood at her previous position. She had already walked far away, her back gradually disappearing into the crowd. She was clearly dressed in bright red, but for some reason she gave off a bleak and cold feeling. After a moment of silence, he waved his sleeve. Suddenly there was a flash on the surface of the lake. Something broke out of the water and landed in his palm. Shen Jili opened his palm. A broken jade lock was quietly lying in his palm. The lock had long been broken and nowhere to be found. On the jade lock, there was a shocking and deep crack between the two names. It was like a clear boundary. The rain soaked his clothes and gave him a heart-piercing chill. Shen Jili's fingers clenched tightly. In that moment, countless distant memories flooded his mind, making him feel both sweet and sad. Chapter 1365. Countless yellowed images flashed by, but upon contact they scattered like shooting stars, and not a single trace of them could be found. Shen Jili's icy blue eyes flashed with pain. He slowly touched a character on the jade lock, tracing it over and over again, Xuema. At this moment he understood that 10 years ago he definitely didn't take her as a disciple. Otherwise he wouldn't have allowed her to hang this kind of lock here and even set up a barrier to protect it. Ning Xuema, are you still Xuemo? Did you approach me this time because you really like me? Or do you still want to get something from here? When he returned from amnesia, her excitement when she saw him again didn't seem fake. Her actions as if she liked him also didn't seem fake. But, when she approached him in the previous life she was also so romantic and flirtatious. When she stayed by his side she was also endlessly happy as if she liked him to the extreme. But she turned around and stabbed him with a sword, taking his heart's blood to save another man. Ning Xuema, are you really for me this time? Shen Jili felt that he was simply crazy. Reason told him to turn back and be saved, but he couldn't let go of his feelings. He didn't even know what to do if he followed her like this. However, since he followed her, then he would follow her first. He had always done as he pleased and did as he pleased. There were very few opportunities to make himself feel wronged or forced. So this time he didn't want to force himself. If he wanted to follow, then he would follow. First he would observe, then slowly analyze his own thoughts and analyze her. After Ning Xuemo returned to the small building, her heart had already returned to its calm state. She looked outside the window. After the drizzle, all things were sprouting. Nearby, flowers bloomed layer by layer, green grass grew, and in the distance, green mountains stretched endlessly and white clouds drifted. She sat down and quietly painted. She was painting the current scenery. The sky darkened little by little. Ning Xuema lit a lamp and boiled oil, taking the opportunity to paint an impressionistic scene. The moon hung high above the willow branches and people met at dusk. Shen Jili sat on a tree, looking at the light in the small building not far away, looking at the red-clothed girl painting under the light. Looking at her serene and beautiful face, looking at the scene she painted taking shape bit by bit. He pulled out a jade gourd out of nowhere and drank a mouthful of wine. Ning Xuema suddenly raised her head and glanced at the two of them. Shen Jili's body stiffened. Could it be that she had seen through him? That's impossible. He's already invisible. However, Ning Xuema only glanced at him for a moment before lowering her head and continuing to paint. Under her brush, a large tree with luxuriant leaves was slowly taking shape. So he was here to draw trees? Shen Jili couldn't tell if he was glad or disappointed. However, the strange thing was that the big tree used as a model was clearly flourishing like spring, and its leaves were as green as jade. However, what she drew was full of withered leaves hanging from the branches. They were rustling in the breeze and looked as if they would fall at any time. Shen Jili himself was the art sage. In this world, no one understood painting better than he did. Generally, what a painter painted reflected the painter's mentality at that time. Why was her mentality so bleak now? He glanced at the painting and could feel a sense of bleakness and silence. The big tree seemed to be trying its best to pull itself together and not let the leaves fall. However, it couldn't withstand the strong autumn wind. Ning Xuema didn't know why, but when she looked at the big tree under her brush, she was in a daze. Was this a freehand style? Chapter 1366. Originally, she thought that the big tree looked good and wanted to copy it with her brush, but in the end she drew a withered tree. This was not the right way to draw even if she copied it. While she was in a daze, a drop of ink fell to the ground. The branch instantly became dizzy as if it had been destroyed by something. Ning Xuema was stunned. Then, she looked at the painting with an expressionless face and rubbed her fingers on the paper. The painting instantly turned into thousands of pieces of paper, flying all over the sky. It was like a heavy snowfall and the ground was in a mess. Ning Xuema stood quietly among the pieces of paper. No one knew what she was thinking. A red figure flew from the sky and landed in front of the small building. Then he walked into the small building with light steps. He seemed to be in a good mood. It was Shui Yilan. Shenjuli looked at the pair of figures under the light and took another sip of wine. His icy blue eyes were like the ebb and flow of the sea. Shenjuli had become an invisible person. Every day he silently followed behind Ning Xuema. He used to like drinking tea, but now he liked drinking wine. The wine gourd never left his side. She stood by the water and looked at the rippling waves and the clouds in the sky. He leaned against the tree and looked at her red dress and black hair fluttering in the wind. She suddenly became obsessed with painting. When she had nothing to do, she painted the sky, the earth, the mountains, and the water. However, she did not paint people. Her paintings looked lively, but there was always a sense of loneliness that could not be hidden. She was like a flower in the wind and rain, trying hard not to wither in the autumn wind, trying hard to survive the winter. She never kept her paintings. Once she finished them, they would be destroyed. They would be directly destroyed into dust and dissipate in the air. However, he restored the paintings in a corner where she could not see them. He looked at them carefully again and again as if he was trying to find something in them. Her painting skills were not bad and she was very talented. However, in his eyes, her paintings were still the scribbles of a primary school student. He was usually too lazy to look at such paintings, but now he could not help but restore them and keep them. He didn't know why he had to follow her all the time, but if he didn't see her for a day, his heart would feel empty. She seemed to have returned to normal. There was a smile on her face and she was talking and laughing with Shui Yilan. On the surface there was nothing wrong with her. It was only in the painting that he could see a hint of her emotions. Ning Xuema's days were very dull. She would either practice martial arts or go out for a walk. She also got along very well with Shui Yilan. Every day Shui Yilan would leave early and return late, while she would stay here leisurely, cultivating, painting, and strolling. They looked like an ordinary couple living in seclusion in the suburbs. Occasionally she would go out with Shui Yilan. When they met passers-by, they would think that they were husband and wife and praise them for being a perfect couple. Often Shui Yilan would smile like a blooming flower. As for Ning Xuema, she only smiled and didn't refute anything. Perhaps she was destined to be together with Shui Yilan. After going around in circles for so long, she was just back to where she started. Didn't she like Shui Yilan in her previous life? Then she would definitely like him in this life too. It was impossible for her to love him so deeply in her previous life, but not feel anything in this life. If she did not meet Shinjuli first and fell in love with him first, perhaps she would have slowly fallen in love with Shui Yilan. Or it could be said that she liked Shinjuli in this life because she owed him in her previous life. She felt guilty, so God wanted to punish her and let her have a taste of being betrayed by the person she loved. Now that she had tasted it, she also woke up from her dream. Chapter 1367. It was time to return to the starting point. People weren't afraid of returning to the starting point, but they were afraid of not being able to find the right direction. They were afraid of being completely lost on the wrong path. Therefore she should be glad that she hadn't gone too far on the wrong path. Although she had almost lost a layer of skin in the swamp of the wrong path, it was fortunate that she had returned to the starting point alive, wasn't it? That must be it. That must be it. She had to walk out of it. She had to walk out of it slowly. She wanted to be her former self. She wanted to create a new world for herself in this world. Whether she was an immortal or a devil, it was just a matter of a thought. As long as she kept her original heart, why would she care if she was an immortal or a devil? Everyone said that the best way to walk out of a relationship was to walk into another one. Therefore she wanted to try with Shui Yilan. Maybe she could really find the right feelings again? Everything was still unknown, wasn't it? After trying, she might not be able to love again. However, if she didn't try, she would never know if she could love again. Doing this might be unfair to Shui Yilan. Therefore, even if she couldn't love him in the future, she would treat him as a friend and compensate him in other ways. Perhaps after a few years, she and Shui Yilan would really fall in love and get married. It would be a beautiful story. At that time, if she heard any news about Shinjuli, she might really be able to laugh it off. Even if the news was that he and Yunxi were married, even if he really came to kill her, she would be able to have a real showdown with him. In this world, she could survive without anyone. The earth would continue to rotate regardless of who left. Without Shinjuli, she could still live a wonderful life. She had to live a wonderful life and not let others see her as a joke. Some people weren't born to help each other in times of need. They should forget about each other. She hypnotized herself like this almost every day and finally started to pull herself together. When she first arrived in the devil world, she always felt like there was a bomb in her chest that could explode at any time. She wanted to blow up Tianyin Peak and take everything in the world down with her. She was full of negative energy. She tried her best to suppress it and force herself to sleep so that she could temporarily forget everything. But now, her emotions that were about to explode had finally calmed down. She could stop thinking about it for the time being and stop thinking about anything related to him. Even when she heard that he had expelled her from the sect and demolished her side hall, she was still able to remain calm and collected. Progress. This was progress. Therefore, if she could walk out of it, she would definitely be able to. It was only a matter of time. Time was the best medicine for healing. If 3 years were not enough, then 5 years would be enough. If 5 years were not enough, then 10 years would be enough. She had plenty of time to waste. She would hypnotize herself like this once a day, and the effect of this self-hypnosis was pretty good. She was now able to sleep soundly a few times. Unlike a few days ago, she would have nightmares whenever she fell asleep. In her dreams, it was either a world of ice and snow, or she was helplessly bobbing up and down in the copper cauldron. She had a good night's sleep and woke up earlier than usual. She looked out of the window and saw that the sky was still dark. There were a few stars in the night sky. She lay on the bed for a moment and after thinking for a while, she decided to go out and cultivate. The spiritual energy here was extremely abundant, and it was a good place to recover and cultivate. Just when she opened the door, a person suddenly fell through the door. Ning Xuema was shocked and subconsciously took a step back. That person fell to the ground with a plop. Chapter 1368. That person had quick reflexes. He jumped up and almost hit the door frame in a daze. After he steadied himself, he seemed to realize what had happened and looked at Ning Xuema. His eyes were a little hazy, and it was obvious that he was not fully awake. His voice was a little hoarse. Momo? Ning Xuema, why did Shui Yilan choose to lean against her door instead of sleeping on his bed in his room? Ning Xuema looked at the faint shadows under Shui Yilan's eyes and was even more speechless. He must have been leaning against her door for a few days now. How did she not notice? She hugged her arms. Why are you sleeping here? Shui Yilan seemed a little embarrassed and laughed. I'm feeling a little warm. It's cooler to sleep here. What kind of reason was that? Ning Xuema. Why don't you go back to your own room? Shui Yilan did not answer her question and changed the topic. Momo, you woke up early today. What do you want to eat? I'll make it for you. However, he sighed in his heart. He could only have a good night's sleep when he was closer to her. He was always afraid that Ning Xuema would disappear when he woke up in his room. He wanted to watch over her all the time, but he knew that Ning Xuema would not allow him to sleep in the same room as her. Therefore, he secretly leaned against her door to sleep. Every day he would go to Mount Yuehua again before she woke up. He had been doing this from the beginning and Momo had never noticed. He thought that he wouldn't be discovered, but he didn't expect that Ning Xuema would wake up earlier than usual, and he also fell into a deep sleep. Ning Xuema looked at him for a long time and paused. You don't have to be so worried. If I want to leave, I'll let you know in advance. Shui Yilan looked down slightly and nodded. He then went to prepare dinner for her. Ning Xuema stood there for a moment, then smiled and shook her head. She had never thought that Shui Yilan would have such a silly side to him. She found it funny and felt touched. At the same time, she also felt a little heavy. Shui Yilan was too infatuated with her. She was afraid that she wouldn't be able to repay him in the future. She turned and went into the room. Since she had found out once, he probably wouldn't do it again, right? But it turned out that Ning Xuema was wrong. For the next few days, Ning Xuema woke up earlier and earlier. Every day she would see Shui Yilan leaning against her door and sleeping. Ning Xuema was speechless. Finally, on the third day she found him at the door. She pulled him into the house and looked into his eyes. How can you be at ease? Every day when I think about you sleeping outside my door, I have nightmares. Shui Yilan's face was slightly pale. You had nightmares even when I was guarding the door? Then I won't guard it in the future. Only then did Ning Xuema let out a sigh of relief. Her palm patted his shoulder. Now that's more like it. She then pushed him towards the door. All right, you can go do your own thing. Shui Yilan smiled and left. Ning Xuema was about to close the door when she inadvertently looked up. She seemed to see a white shadow flashing on a big tree in the courtyard. Her heart suddenly jumped and her face turned pale. Who's there? Her voice was almost shrill. The branches and leaves of the big tree swayed, but no one came out. She suppressed her heartbeat and opened her eyes to look carefully. Although the branches and leaves of the big tree were dense, if there was someone hiding, it still couldn't escape her eyes. Was she seeing things? Ning Xuema stood still and stared at the big tree for a long time. In the end, she was still worried and slowly walked over. Chapter 1369. She was already at the 9th level of the Earth stage. Ordinary camouflage wouldn't be able to escape her eyes. Furthermore, she had always had the ability to see through other people's disguises. Back when she was at the 2nd level of the Earth stage, she could easily see through the disguises of her senior brothers. With her current level, there was probably no disguise in this world that could escape her eyes. She walked in a circle around the tree, looking up and down at every branch and slit. There were no abnormalities. She was indeed seeing things. She closed her eyes slightly and seemed to heave a sigh of relief or something else. She raised her hand and knocked on her head, muttering to herself, "Indeed, I'm seeing things. It seems that I've been lacking sleep recently." After taking 2 steps, she turned her head and sniffed. There seemed to be a slight smell of alcohol on the tree. The smell of alcohol was very faint, but Ning Xuema could smell that it was the most famous local liquor. Its alcohol content was comparable to the burning knives of her era. Her heart skipped a beat. Who would be leaning on this tree and drinking? Could it be? Her heart felt like it was being grabbed by something and constricted. At that moment, she even felt like she was suffocating. She froze on the spot for a moment and suddenly laughed. What was she thinking about? How could that person be here? He was probably playing chess and drinking tea on Tianyin Peak, enjoying his leisure days or touring with Yunxi. Why would he be here? Besides, he always drank tea. She had been with him for so long, but she rarely saw him drink. Even if he did, he would drink the best wine that he brewed himself and not the common wine here. He was really being overly paranoid. Perhaps Shui Yilan had leaned on this tree to drink? That was completely possible. After figuring this out, she finally heaved a sigh of relief. Without any hesitation, she turned and walked towards the training field. The sky was about to turn bright. It was a good time to practice martial arts. No matter what, it would be better to practice martial arts. The higher the level, the less likely it would be for her to be taken advantage of. The less likely it would be for her to be stepped on like mud. The night was like wisps of silk. The graceful figure gradually disappeared into the distant forest. On one of the branches of the big tree, a white figure gradually appeared. He was holding a wine gourd in his hand. His long hair was loose and unbound. He looked in the direction that Ning Xuema had left, slightly lost in thought. Just now he was not paying attention and almost exposed himself. Fortunately, his kung fu was very high and his invisibility skill was at its peak. When Ning Xuema was searching the tree, she almost stepped on the corner of his clothes. Her hair even brushed against his cheek. He smelled the faint fragrance on her body again. It was so familiar that it made his heart palpitate. In that instant, a desire arose in his heart, a desire to fiercely pull her into his embrace. But she quickly brushed past him and jumped down the tree. He saw her leaning against the tree trunk as if she was thinking about something. Her bright red dress was extremely dazzling in the night, and it burned his eyes like a raging fire. He leaned against the tree trunk and pursed his lips as he looked at her. She seemed to have thought of something funny. She smiled and shook her head. What was she laughing at? Shenjuli could not help but be lost in thought. Could it be that she was moved by Shui Yilan, that bastard, sleeping at her door every night? He could not help but tilt his head back and take another sip of wine. As the strong wine entered his throat, his heart burned. Chapter 1370. After thinking for a moment, his figure flashed and disappeared without a trace. Shui Yilan was very meticulous. This house was originally created by him using a spell, but the layout was very appropriate. Each hall and each pavilion were ingenious, which was the style that Ning Xuema usually liked. Even this martial arts field, according to Ning Xuema, as long as there was a flat piece of land, it would be fine. However, the martial arts field that Shui Yilan created was a lawn. The grass here was neater and softer than the grass that was mowed by the sanitation workers in the modern city. When practicing martial arts on the grass, she would not bump into anything. The grass was very clean. If she was tired, she could lie down on it and it would be a ready-made grass mat. Ning Xuema had already laid down on it several times. The faint smell of the grass filled with the smell of the fields seeped into her nose, making her forget all her worries. At this moment, Ning Xuema had just practiced a round of boxing and stretched her muscles. After she broke off with Shinjoli, although he did not destroy her martial arts, she did not want to practice the martial arts that he taught her anymore. Fortunately, she already knew a lot of miscellaneous skills. In addition, she was a secret agent, so she had her own way of warming up. For example, she was now practicing Tai Chi. Each move was very professional. Shinjuli sat on a tree not far away and watched her practice. He had already watched her practice for several days. The fist and palm techniques that she used to warm up were very strange. He was familiar with the martial arts of this world as easily as he was familiar with his palm prints. He even knew the martial arts of the demon world. However, he had never seen someone like Ning Xuema. It was not like any of the three realms of immortals, demons or humans, but it was faintly familiar to him. 10 years ago when he was with her, she should have practiced these fist and palm techniques in front of him, right? Where did she learn these martial arts? These days he had secretly investigated Ning Xuema's true origin. She was a nine-tailed fox in her previous life, but in this life she was a real person. It was obvious that she had reincarnated, or perhaps she had possessed the body of the original owner. Ning Xuema's deeds in vast sky country were widely spread, so he could easily find out everything about her in vast sky country more than 10 years ago. After a little analysis, he knew that she was reincarnated in another body. However, the things that happened between him and Han Shangyue and Ning Xuema were still unknown to others. At most, they only knew the surface of it. After looking through the information for a long time, he only found out that she had once been his concubine, and it seemed that he had taken advantage of the situation to force her. Because all his memories had disappeared, Shinjuli didn't quite understand what he was thinking at that time. How could he be so fond of a good-for-nothing girl? Forced marriage? This was not his usual style of doing things. However, judging from this message, he had never treated her as a real disciple. It was more like a joke. Later on, he had even brought Ning Xuema to attend the wedding of the current crown prince of vast sky country, Ji Yunhuang. He had even let Ning Xuema sit on the same level as him, receiving the worship of the courtiers. It was obvious that he had the thought of marrying her at that time. Otherwise, he wouldn't have allowed her to sit on the same position at that time. After he regained this disciple of his, he felt that his feelings for this disciple of his were extremely strange, so he secretly went to investigate the past. After he found out, he understood that when he took her as his disciple 10 years ago, he didn't take her as his disciple at all, but as his wife. Chapter 1371. No wonder he didn't feel uncomfortable when he hugged her. No wonder his heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat when he saw her being wronged. In his previous life he was stabbed by her when he fell in love. In this life, what would happen to him when he fell in love? 10 years ago he didn't have the memories of Shui Yimo, but he fell in love with her again. 10 years later, he had accidentally recovered his memories from his past life and recognized her as Shui Yimo. He had even forgotten what had happened between him and her 10 years ago. Was this because the heavens were afraid that he would repeat the same mistakes, so they had done this? Shinjuli raised his head and drank another mouthful of wine. He looked down at Ning Xuema, who was cultivating. She was probably tired from cultivating. At this moment she was lying down on the grass with a grass stick in her mouth. She looked up at the sky, not knowing what she was thinking. At this moment the sky was already bright. The blue sky, white clouds, green grass and red-clothed beauty were all very pleasing to the eye. Shinjuli had never liked red things, but when Ning Xuema wore this red dress, he felt that it was very fitting and beautiful. It was as if she was born to wear this dress. Only by wearing this dress could it match her temperament. It was a pity that Shui Yilan also liked to wear red. When they stood together, he felt that it was very dazzling. He still hadn't thought of what to do next. He told himself that he should follow them for a while. He had always been patient, and this time was no exception. Ning Xuema suddenly sat up. She looked around cautiously. There was no one. There was no one. She couldn't even see a wild rabbit in the area closest to her. Strange, was she being too paranoid? She clearly couldn't see anyone, but she had a strong feeling that someone was spying on her. Ning Xuema slowly got up and walked around in a circle. Shinjuli lowered his eyes to look at her. He saw her look around and for a moment, their eyes met. Although he knew that she couldn't see him, his heart still tightened. He held his breath. Ning Xuema walked around in a circle. She didn't find anything, so she relaxed and sighed. For a moment just now, she even suspected that he had arrived and was spying on her in the dark. With his personality, if he wanted to kill her, there was no need for him to hide in the dark, right? He would unleash a thunderous strike, just like when he killed Wu Mo and was almost slapped to death by Wu Mo's palm. If he were to make a move now, it would only be more powerful than that palm strike. If he did not want to kill her, there was no need for him to peek at her from behind. He was not that kind of person. He had been overly paranoid recently. He had to change that. She took a deep breath and shook her head, trying to get rid of all the messy thoughts in her head. Ning Xuema felt lonely practicing martial arts in the wilderness, so she decided to sing at the top of her lungs. 10 fingers like instant lotus flower blooming. The girdle looks like a portrait of elegance. Modeled wall paintings were painted with candles facing the gods and Buddhas in the sky. She was singing a song that was widely circulated on the internet, When Shura. Her voice had always been excellent, and she had unconsciously expressed her feelings, so she sang with great emotion. As if singing alone was not enough, she even added a dance, a sword dance. Flute sound alley several times falling down. Should laugh at me, can't see through early encounter, 'cause an effect waiting to be worn away, become my inner demon even if I can't bear to part with the old moonlight, also wasted. It was Shinjuli's first time hearing her sing and watching her dance since they were reunited in this world. He was a little stunned for a moment, so he pursed his lips and listened. When he heard the last part of the song, his heart was slightly shaken. 10 years in the secular world, once with promises, swords scattered tenderness on the temples become floating pavilions. Chapter 1372. The depth of love is like a vine burning like the fire of karma. The sword of today points to the past, once wet, who will become the azura of the other's heart. He silently chewed on the lyrics and felt a pain in his heart. Who will become the azura of the other's heart? She had already become the azura of the other's heart. It was an unspeakable wound, a tribulation that he wanted to get rid of but couldn't. What about her? Had he also become the azura of the other's heart? He looked down at her and his mind was in a mess. When he came back to his senses, Ning Xuema was no longer on the grass. She must have left after finishing her practice, leaving only the lingering sound of her singing. Shinjuli raised his hand and a jade flute appeared in his palm. He was about to blow on it when he suddenly thought of something and slowly put it down. Ning Xuema was relieved. Ever since she talked to Shui Yilan that night, Shui Yilan didn't lean on her door to sleep. She deliberately woke up 2 days earlier and didn't see him when she opened the door. On the third day, Ning Xuema slept until midnight. She suddenly thought of something. She didn't rush to get out of bed but listened for a while. Then, she still maintained her calm breathing as if she was asleep. She quietly got out of bed and quietly went to the door. Her movements were very light, even softer than the sound of a leaf falling to the ground. She abruptly pulled open the door and saw a red shadow flipping over the wall in front of her and disappearing like a gust of wind. The red shadow was so fast that she could only see a dreamlike afterimage. If it wasn't for her amazing eyesight, she wouldn't have even seen the afterimage. Ning Xuema was speechless. It turned out that it wasn't that he didn't lean on her door to rest, but that he was more alert. The moment she made a move, he would disappear without a trace. Ning Xuema clenched her fists. Shui Yilan was such an idiot. Wasn't he tired of sleeping like this? No wonder she saw the dark circles under his eyes getting heavier. So that was why. She lowered her eyes and thought for a moment. Then she steeled her heart and ran directly to Shui Yilan's courtyard. She anxiously knocked on his door. After a while, Shui Yilan came out with a sleepy look. "Momo, it's the middle of the night. Are you looking for me?" "You can keep pretending." Ning Xuema didn't say anything. She pushed him away and barged into his room. Without saying anything, she touched the messy quilt on his bed. The blanket was ice cold, without the slightest warmth of someone who had slept here before. It was obvious that Shui Yilan had run back in a hurry. When he heard that she had arrived, he pulled the blanket aside to create an illusion. Shui Yilan saw her touch his blanket, and his expression changed slightly. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but no words came out. Ning Xuema crossed her arms and looked at him. "Shui Yilan, don't you have anything to say to me?" Say what?" Shui Yilan was stubborn. Ning Xuema was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. She pulled him away and said, "Come with me." Shui Yilan was nervous. He was afraid that Ning Xuema would get angry and throw him out. He couldn't help but say, "Momo, I didn't do it on purpose. I'm just a little scared." He was too worried about his gains and losses. He could only take a nap and rest while standing guard outside her room and listening to her shallow breathing. He was already very careful. Even if he took a nap, he would always keep an ear open to listen for her movements. As long as he heard her get out of bed, he would immediately run away so that she couldn't see him. He didn't expect that she would catch him off guard in the middle of the night. She caught him off guard and found out. Chapter 1373. How would she treat him? Would she feel restrained again? Would she feel like she was being imprisoned by him again? Shui Yilan didn't know what Ning Xuema was up to now, but he couldn't bear to break free from her hand. Thus she pulled him into her room. After entering her room he was slightly stunned. Ning Xuema's room had an extra bed with a complete set of bedding. Ning Xuema pressed him onto the bed. You sleep here. Stop sneaking around and acting like a door god. The bed was very ordinary and the bedding was also very ordinary. Shui Yilan's chest felt warm. It was as if there was a warm current rolling around. Momo? He called out to her but he didn't know what to say. Ning Xuema laid down on her own bed. Okay, let's sleep. Shui Yilan slowly laid down on the small bed. He looked at Ning Xuema's side profile, and his chest felt as if there were waves rolling in the ocean. Ning Xuema was also a little sleepy after being tormented for so long. She closed her eyes and wanted to sleep again. However, there was one more person in the room and the one more was Shui Yilan. She felt a little uneasy and she didn't know what to feel. She had to get used to it. Everything would be fine once she got used to it. Once upon a time, didn't she and Shin Juli sleep in the same room? Even when they slept on the same bed it didn't feel awkward. She even rolled into his arms when she was asleep. Stop. She couldn't think about him anymore. Sleep, sleep. She tried her best to adjust her breathing and cultivate her sleepiness. Momo, can't you sleep? Shui Yilan's voice suddenly sounded from nearby. Ning Xuema was shocked. She quickly opened her eyes and found that Shui Yilan had already dragged his bed closer to hers. The distance between the two beds was only about 10 centimeters. The first thing she saw when she opened her eyes was Shui Yilan's enlarged handsome face. She subconsciously retreated into the bed and frowned. Why are you so close to me? Momo, I remember there's a saying in the human world, even in bed we can talk at night. Let's talk too. What is there to talk about? Let's sleep. Ning Xuema leaned inwards, subconsciously keeping a certain distance from him. Momo, if you have a piece of moonlight iron, what kind of weapon do you want? Sword? Ning Xuema yawned. I don't want a sword. I want a saber. Machete. Shui Yilan was stunned for a moment. I don't think a machete is suitable for you. Swords are prettier for girls. Weapons are used for self-defense and killing, not for show. Ning Xuema yawned again. I'm not interested in any kind of sword. In fact, she was now scared of any weapon that looked like the Ame piercer. Shui Yilan was also a smart person. He suddenly understood. His eyebrows slightly curved. Okay, then I'll make a saber. After talking with him, Ning Xuema felt less sleepy. She was somewhat curious. You have moonlight iron? Shui Yilan smiled and spread his palm flat. A large piece of moonlight iron appeared in his hand. It was a very large piece. It was half the length of his arm. In the room, it flickered with a moon-like luster. The best quality moonlight iron. It was simply the ancestor of moonlight iron. Ning Xuema suddenly opened her eyes wide and stared at the piece of moonlight iron. Her heart skipped a beat. She turned and stared at Shui Yilan. You've been going out early and coming back late these days. Are you looking for moonlight iron? Shui Yilan smiled. I'm quite lucky. I actually found a large piece so quickly. Chapter 1374. Ning Xuema had also made moonlight iron before, so she knew how hard it was to make it. It was even harder than winning the lottery. It was rare for him to have the heart to go out early and return late every day to make this for her. Her heart was a little sour, but also a little warm. She took the moonlight iron and looked at it. I think this piece of iron can be used to make 2 weapons. Then how about we make 2 weapons? I also lack a suitable weapon, so let's make a pair of knives. Shui Yilan's eyes sparkled. Ning Xuema's heart jumped. Wouldn't that make it a couple's knives? Shui Yilan looked into her eyes. Momo, don't worry. This piece of iron can be used to make your machete first, and I'll make a small knife with the rest. He only wanted to have one thing that he could share with her. Ning Xuema turned to look at him. You're thinking too much. I'm not afraid of not having enough materials. Shui Yilan finally breathed a sigh of relief. Then there's no problem. Don't worry. I'll definitely make the best knife in the world for you. Ning Xuema couldn't help but sigh. Shui Yilan, you don't have to be so good to me. She only promised to try it with him, but she didn't say that she would marry him. Him doing this made her feel even more burdened. Momo, you deserve the best. No matter how good I am to you, it's never too much. You don't have to do anything. You just have to give me a chance to be good to you. Shui Yilan's eyes sparkled like the moonlight in the night. Ning Xuema didn't say anything. She looked at Shui Yilan in a daze. The moonlight in the room was half bright and half dark. Under the moonlight, Ning Xuema's skin was like jade, and her eyes were like a lake under the moonlight, sparkling and shining. Perhaps the moonlight was too beautiful, but the atmosphere in the room gradually became ambiguous. By the time Ning Xuema noticed something, she was shocked to find that Shui Yilan's face was already less than a foot away from her. Ning Xuema's body stiffened as his hot breath blew against her face. Instinctively she wanted to retreat, but Shui Yilan sighed softly. Momo. His lips came down on hers. Ning Xuema's heart suddenly trembled. She wanted to raise her hand to stop him, but she seemed to have thought of something and her hand fell halfway. His lips touched hers and she clenched her fists to stop herself from rejecting him. She had to take this step. She closed her eyes wanting to accept the kiss. Boom. The perfectly fine window frame suddenly shattered into pieces. That loud noise shocked the two people whose lips had just touched. Before Shui Yilan could react, a beam of white light smashed towards him with the force of a thunderbolt. He hurriedly rolled out of the room. His movements were as fast as lightning, and he managed to dodge the fatal blow. However, the bed under him was not so lucky, and it was directly smashed into with chips. Shui Yilan directly rolled on the ground. He didn't even have the time to jump up when another white light shot over. This time it hit his chest directly. If it hit him, Shui Yilan's chest would have a big hole, and he would die immediately. Stop! Ning Xuema shouted. In this critical moment she didn't have time to think carefully. Her body flashed and she directly threw herself onto Shui Yilan, using her back to block the white light. That white light was about to hit her back, but it was forcefully moved to the side. With a loud bang, Ning Xuema's bed disappeared without a trace. Ning Xuema was still in shock. Before she could do anything else, her back was suddenly tightened and she was lifted upside down. At the same time, another beam of white light hit Shui Yilan, who was still on the ground. Chapter 1375. Shui Yilan hurriedly rolled to the side, dodging the white light's pursuit. Then he stood up like a carp. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. It was so fast that no one had time to think. Everything was instinctive. Shui Yilan finally saw the true face of the person who attacked him. Xinjiuli. He appeared in the room, his white robe fluttering in the wind. His murderous aura was overflowing. Ning Xuema was held in his arms and couldn't move for a moment. Xinjiuli. What are you doing here? Let go of Momo. Shui Yilan threw himself at Xinjiuli. Xinjiuli didn't have any intention of speaking. His left arm was still holding Ning Xuema. He raised his right hand and a ball of light formed in his palm. Then he threw it at Shui Yilan. It could be said that Shui Yilan had fought with him a few times, but this was the first time he tasted a killing move that could directly smash a person into pieces. That white light was extremely powerful. As soon as it was released, it carried a power that could destroy the heavens and exterminate the earth. The other furniture in the room was like paper. Wherever the white light passed, everything turned into fine powder. Those broken pieces were also wrapped in the white light. Between the heaven and earth, a dazzling white light appeared. That power was not something that Shui Yilan could resist at this moment. Shui Yilan threw caution to the wind. He didn't have any intention of retreating. He gritted his teeth and charged at the white light that could destroy him 300 times. At the same time he released a red light. Put down Momo. Bang. With a loud sound, the red light and the white light collided. It was as if two atomic bombs had collided. The white light smashed apart the red light as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Shui Yilan's body flew out like a kite and crashed into a rock not far away. He immediately vomited blood. Before he could catch his breath, the white light came at him again. At this moment of life and death, Shui Yilan also went all out. He couldn't dodge in time and could only set up another protective barrier. However, how could this barrier, which he had hastily set up, be a match for the furious Xinjiuli? The white light once again destroyed Shui Yilan's protective barrier like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. Shui Yilan's body was once again sent flying like a rag. At this moment, the buildings and pavilions here were all affected by the destructive white light, flying into the air one after another. The originally clear sky with few stars was now covered by the flying debris and dust. The ground beneath their feet was shaking and everything was being destroyed. When Shui Yilan was sent flying for the second time, he crashed into a big tree behind him. The incomparably sturdy tree, which was as thick as a pig's waist, was actually uprooted by the force of the collision. Shui Yilan's vision suddenly turned black. He felt that this collision seemed to have knocked out his internal organs. His body slid down the tree, spitting out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't get up for a while. Stars appeared in front of his eyes and he saw that the white light was condensing again, but he didn't have the strength to dodge it. His heart turned cold, and he subconsciously closed his eyes. He didn't expect that after practicing hard for so long, he was still far from being Shinjuli's opponent. Especially when the other party was furious, he didn't even have the chance to fight back. Chi. There was a soft sound as if something sharp had pierced through flesh. The smell of blood seeped out of the air. Shuilan hurriedly opened his eyes. What he saw in front of him made him hold his breath. Ning Xuema's palm had a sharp knife pierced into Shinjuli's stomach. Shinjuli's face was pale, and his pair of deep blue eyes looked at her in disbelief. You. Chapter 1376. Ning Xuema's heart was beating wildly. Her face was also deathly pale. She suddenly slammed her palm down on his chest. Bastard, let go of me. Shinjuli did not dodge and allowed Ning Xuema's palm to land on his chest. She had used quite a bit of strength, causing his body to sway slightly. His arm finally loosened, and Ning Xuema took this opportunity to jump back 3 feet, far away from his aura. She stood there, feeling her fingertips tremble. The moment she saw him, her heart beat like thunder. Before she could find the proper reaction to him, he had already launched a series of killer moves on Shuilan. Each move was more ruthless than the previous, and each move was more deadly than the previous. In a split second, her anger rushed to her head. Why was he not willing to let her go? Why did he want to kill Shuilan? She was so angry that she couldn't help but protect Shuilan. However, she didn't expect that she wouldn't be able to protect him at all. Instead, she was lifted up by him like a little chick, and then held tightly in his embrace. He held her so tightly that she almost couldn't breathe. She struggled with all her might, but she was unable to break free from his hold. She could only watch as he hit Shuilan again and again, throwing Shuilan around like a rag. He was about to fall to his death. At that moment, her blood rushed to her head. Did he think that he could do whatever he wanted just because he was a god? Did he think that he could trample on anyone's dignity? Did he want to catch her and cook her in his copper cauldron? She struggled even harder but couldn't free herself for a moment. Seeing that Shuilan was about to lose his life under her palm, she finally couldn't bear it any longer. The moment she struggled to free her arms, she also pulled out the knife she had hidden in her storage space. Without thinking, she stabbed at his abdomen. She just wanted to force him to let go. She didn't expect to really stab him, nor did she expect to really hurt him. However, this was not the time for her to think about anything else. After she escaped from Shinjuli's grasp, she subconsciously stood in front of Shuilan, shielding him behind her. She held her saber across her chest and looked at him warily. She watched as the white robe between his abdomen was quickly dyed red with blood. The bright red color stung her eyes. Shinjuli lowered his eyes and looked at his white robe. He slowly raised his head and stared at Ning Xuema. He watched as she stood in front of Shuilan like a mother hen protecting her chicks. Her intention to protect him couldn't be any more obvious. His face became even paler. His arm, which was about to make a move, slowly drooped down. Ning Xuema, in this life you still chose him? His voice seemed calm, but if one listened carefully, one would notice a slight tremor in his voice. Ning Xuema's mind was buzzing at this moment. While countless emotions were roaring in her chest, her mind was blank. She only had one instinct left. She could not let him really kill Shuilan. She could not let him catch her and cook her. She suddenly took a step back. Shinjuli, you and I have already cut off all ties. If you want to clean up the sect, come at me. Let him go. He announced to the public that he had cut off all ties with her. He also wanted to clean up the sect himself and not let any sect interfere. Now he had finally found her. He was finally going to clean up the sect. The knife in her hand was still dripping with blood. She pointed the bloody tip of the knife at her own dantian. Are you going to take back the Sun Moon sect's martial arts that you taught me? You don't have to do it, I'll do it myself. She stabbed the knife at her own dantian. Chapter 1377. She and Shuilan were no match for him even if they worked together. If she did not do something, she and Shuilan would die under his hands. Anyway, she did not want the Sun Moon sect's martial arts anymore. She would just destroy herself and return it to him. A white light shot out and hit her saber, sending her saber flying. Ning Xuema's wrist was numb from the shock. She suddenly raised her head, her eyes filled with grief. Shinjuli, I've already escaped here but you still won't let me go? Fine, come on. If you want to kill me, do whatever you want. She took a step in his direction. Shinjuli's fingers were also trembling. He wanted to say that he had never thought of cleaning up the sect. He wanted to say that he did not want her to be his disciple anymore. That was a joke and there was no need for that joke to continue. He wanted to say that it was not that he did not want to let her go, but that he could not let himself go. But under such circumstances he could not say it. She stabbed him again for Shuilan. She protected Shuilan behind her and stared at him with hatred. At this moment he could not say it, perhaps it was really time for him to let go. Let go and help them. He finally took 2 steps back. Fine, I'll let you go, both of you. You're on your own now. As soon as he turned around, his white figure suddenly disappeared. Ning Xuema did not expect him to leave just like that. He left so straightforwardly. She was stunned for a moment. She heaved a sigh of relief, but she also felt that she had stepped on air. Her heart was empty. The sword in her hand also fell to the ground. After such a series of events, this place was already beyond recognition. All the houses were gone, and the ground was filled with broken stones and bricks. It was like a gravel field. It was not an ordinary mess. The cozy little courtyard that she had stayed in for more than 10 days was nowhere to be found. Ning Xuema looked around blankly. At this moment, she had the illusion that there was nowhere to stay in this vast world. After such a series of ups and downs, her gaze once again fell on the spot where Shinjuli had been standing just now. There were blood stains there, her heart inexplicably twisted, and she abruptly averted her gaze. It landed on Shuilan's body. This time Shuilan was not lightly beaten. His handsome face was green and red. Blood was still dripping from the corner of his lips. He struggled on the ground but failed to get up. Ning Xuema calmed herself down and walked over to take his pulse. Shuilan was seriously injured. His heart meridian was almost broken by Shinjuli. Fortunately, his skin was sturdy and his spirit was strong. He could feel that Ning Xuema's fingers were cold as she took his pulse. He comforted her. Momo, don't be afraid. This kind of injury is nothing to me. I'll be fine after a few days of rest. He was covered in mud and looked rather dusty, but his eyes were bright. When he looked at Ning Xuema, they were like the ripples of a lake. Ning Xuema seemed to be a bit absent-minded. She nodded and casually said, "That's good." Shuilan's eyes dimmed when he saw her like this. However, he immediately regained his spirit and looked around. He couldn't help but clench his fists in his sleeves. The little love nest that he had spent 10% of his strength to build was destroyed by Shinjuli just like that. It was not easy for him to fight for a spot on the bed. This time he was seriously injured and urgently needed to cultivate to recover. He could not build a new house for the time being. "Momo, let's go into the city?" Shuilan held Ning Xuema's cold fingers. Chapter 1378. Okay. Ning Xuema responded. Her eyes were still in a daze. She seemed to be thinking about something, but at the same time she didn't seem to be thinking about anything. It was as if a ball of wool had been stirred up in her heart. It was a mess and she couldn't find a clue. She deliberately told herself not to think too much. She helped Shuilan sit up and said, "Sit properly. I'll treat your injuries." Without any explanation, she sat behind him and pressed her palms on his back. She skillfully treated his injuries. When she channeled her power into her palms and sent her psychokinesis into Shuilan's body, she seemed to hear these words. To treat this kind of internal injury, you need to use abrupt force. Use 30% of your strength to go through the back. This was what Shinjuli had taught her before. She used it skillfully every time she treated someone. Now that she was using it again, she couldn't help but think of these words. Her palms trembled. The psychokinesis she sent out almost went into Shuilan's body. Shuilan's back stiffened. He said softly, "Momo?" Since she had cut off all ties with that person, she didn't want to use the martial arts he taught her. However, if she wanted to use psychokinesis to treat internal injuries, she didn't know how to use anything else. She paused for a moment and pulled back her hand in annoyance. Shuilan didn't know what she was trying to do. He couldn't help but turn around to look at her. Ning Xuema took a deep breath and calmed down. She finally remembered that she could use the medical skills she had learned before. Her acupoint healing method was also very effective. She patted Shuilan's shoulder and said, "Don't be distracted. Sit properly." Shuilan was speechless. She was the one who was distracted, wasn't she? Ning Xuema's acupoint healing method was also very good. Although it wasn't as effective as Shinjuli's method, Shui Yilan was able to stand up after a while. Although his legs were still a little wobbly when he walked, at least she didn't have to carry him. Ning Xuema helped him walk to the main road and hailed a passing carriage. The two of them finally entered the city. After finding an inn, Shui Yilan recuperated in the inn for 2 days and finally recovered a little. His body had a good foundation and he was often injured. Therefore he had brought some healing elixirs with him. After some treatment, he had recovered about 60 to 70% of his strength. He was thinking about using moonlight iron to forge weapons, so as soon as his body recovered, he dragged Ning Xuema to the smithy. "What kind of saber do you want to make?" The black-clothed young blacksmith turned the moonlight iron over and over and looked at it several times. Finally, his gaze fell on Ning Xuema. His tone wasn't very good. He still recognized her. That year, she came here with a white-clothed man to forge weapons. That white-clothed man's ame piercer was made for her. He still remembered that when the two of them came to take the ame piercer, this girl's eyebrows were almost blooming with joy. She held the ame piercer tightly, as if she was afraid that someone would snatch it away from her. Now there was actually a red-clothed man who took an even bigger piece of moonlight iron to forge something for her. No wonder she didn't want the ame piercer. It turned out that she had found a better one. The black-clothed young blacksmith's eyes flashed with a trace of injustice. No wonder people said that women were generally fickle. Now it seemed that this was indeed the case. Ning Xuema was a little absent-minded and didn't hear the black-clothed blacksmith's words. Shui Yilan was in a good mood and asked him to bring over various saber designs for Ning Xuema to choose. Ning Xuema finally regained her senses. She casually looked at the drawings. Chapter 1379. She suddenly felt a little irritated. "Forget it, let's not forge it for now. Let's wait until I think of something new. Don't waste this piece of iron." She pulled Shui Yilan and left without any explanation. Inside a restaurant. The table in the private room was filled with sumptuous dishes and delicious dishes. Ning Xuema drank a mouthful of wine. The wine was soft and sweet, and was suitable for women to drink. Ning Xuema didn't want to drink any more after drinking a mouthful. She slammed the table and called the waiter, "Bring your Lai Hua Chun, that wine will taste good." That wine was the strongest wine in the restaurant, and it was also very common. Ning Xuema had drunk it once and couldn't forget it. Shui Yilan frowned. "That wine is only for the general public. If you want to drink strong wine, why don't you order something else? How about tourmaline autumn? That wine is spicy enough and it's suitable for us." Ning Xuema raised her eyebrows. "I think Lai Hua Chun is better. Didn't you often drink that a few days ago?" Shui Yilan was surprised. "That wine has a herbal taste and I don't like it. I never drink it and I haven't touched wine recently." Ning Xuema was surprised and her heart sank. She looked at him. "You haven't drunk wine recently? Did you drink and forget?" Shui Yilan shook his head. "How can that be? I haven't touched wine for more than a month. Even if I want to drink, I'll drink tourmaline autumn, not Lai Hua Chun." Ning Xuema's expression changed slightly. She remembered the wine she smelled on the tree that day. Although it was light, she could distinguish it very clearly. If the person who drank wine on the tree that day wasn't Shui Yilan, who could it be? Her heart suddenly tightened. If there was someone else in that place, there was no reason why she couldn't sense it, unless that person's skills were much higher than hers. In this world, there were very few people who were much more powerful than her. She could count them with 5 fingers. Then, that person's identity was almost obvious. Bah! While she was distracted, she exerted force in her fingers and crushed a wine glass. The wine spilled all over her hand. "What's wrong with you?" Shui Yilan took her hand and wiped it with a handkerchief. Ning Xuema shook her head. "Nothing." The air was filled with the aroma of wine. Ning Xuema's heart floated. She vaguely remembered that when Shinjuli's thunderous fury appeared, there seemed to be a faint smell of wine on his body. It was the smell of that blazing spring. However, the situation was too tense and chaotic at that time, so she didn't notice it. Now he suddenly remembered. After connecting the two situations, she understood the relationship between the two. Shinjuli was hiding in that tree that day. With his martial arts, if he didn't want her to see it, she wouldn't have seen it no matter what. As it turned out, he didn't attack them the moment he arrived. She vaguely remembered those few days when she felt like she was being peeped at, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find anyone. Now she finally understood that her intuition wasn't wrong. There was indeed someone watching her during those few days. Needless to say, that person was Shinjuli. He was always by her side during those few days. If he wanted to clean up the family, he would have done it long ago, right? Then why was he hiding in the dark? She remembered the expression on Xinjiuli's face when he was stabbed by her, and the words he said before he left. Ning Xuema, you still choose him in this life? Okay, I'll let you go. You're on your own. Her heartstrings seemed to have been plucked by someone, and her face turned pale. With a crack, the chopsticks in her hand broke into 2 pieces. Chapter 1380. Momo? Shui Yilan held her hand. What's wrong with you? Ning Xuema's hand trembled and she quickly withdrew her hand. She was in such a hurry that she knocked over the wine pot on the table. The wine spilled all over the table and dripped down the table. The wine flowed too fast and Ning Xuema's reaction was a little slow. She couldn't avoid it and the wine flowed all over her clothes. Shui Yilan was speechless. He slowly withdrew his hand and paused for a moment. Then he took out a handkerchief and squatted down to wipe her clean. She was in such a mess today. She had never been so clueless in her life. She felt panicked and bitter as if her period was coming. She wanted to cry and laugh at the same time. Her eyes were hot and her nose was sour. Ning Xuema took a deep breath and suppressed the tumultuous emotions in her heart. She tapped her finger on her dress and the soaked hem of her dress dried instantly. She even smiled freely. Why do I have to use such a stupid method when I have a spell? Shui Yilan slowly withdrew his handkerchief and stood up. He smiled. You're right. I'm confused. He looked at the messy cups and plates on the table and called the waiter over. He asked him to remove the wine and dishes and replace them with fresh and steaming dishes. Momo, you must be too tired these 2 days. Eat something. You've lost weight recently. Shui Yilan attentively served her food. Ning Xuema didn't say anything else. She tried her best to calm herself down and return to normal. She ate a few of her favorite dishes. How is it? Shui Yilan looked at her with a smile. It's not bad. Ning Xuema forced a smile. In fact, she couldn't taste anything. She seemed to be very hungry and ate happily. In a short while, she finished a crystal pork shoulder, a plate of prawns and a plate of soy sauce chicken. Shui Yilan was speechless. She ate too much. He didn't say anything else and accompanied her to eat. But his heart slowly sank. She had suffered so much, but deep in her heart she had not completely given up on Xinjiuli, right? She was not behaving as she used to. In the end, Ning Xuema, if you can hold on, I will marry you. Haven't you always wanted to marry me? Shui Yilan, wake up. If you persist, I won't hold a grudge against you for trying to assassinate me. You can even become my disciple. Ning Xuema, I'm only doing this to get rid of the devil in your body. Come here, I won't kill you. Come here, let me take a look at your injuries. Ning Xuema, don't mess around. I'll explain everything to you slowly. Ning Xuema woke up from her nightmare drenched in sweat. She dreamed of being thrown into the copper cauldron and being cooked. These days, she appeared calm on the surface, as if she had already forgotten about that injury. It was only at night that the scene that made her soul tremble and wish she was dead would enter her dreams from time to time, becoming a nightmare that she could never wake up from. Every time she had such a dream, she would desperately order herself to wake up. Wake up. In the midst of extreme pain, she would desperately tell herself that it was a dream. Every time, she would struggle bitterly for a long time to get rid of that nightmare and wake up from the sea of bitterness. Then, she would hug herself in the dark night and keep her eyes open until dawn. She had always boasted that her nerves were as thick as a tree, able to withstand any wind and rain. But after coming to this world, she realized that she was also so fragile. She finally realized that she was also a girl. When she was in extreme pain, she also wanted to cry. Chapter 1381. Back then, Yi Qingwan drowned her and almost destroyed her soul. After she escaped, she was traumatized and was afraid of water for a long time. She worked hard and got rid of that trauma with the help of Yi Feng. After that incident, she thought that she had cultivated an indestructible body and that her resistance to abuse had increased by several times. She thought that nothing could torture her or traumatize her anymore. However, she did not expect that the part where Xinjiuli threw her into the copper cauldron to be boiled alive would become her nightmare again. At that time, the despair, helplessness, loneliness, anger, fear, and pain would engulf her again in her dreams. She could not get rid of it even if she wanted to. Every time she woke up, she did not dare to think about it again. Her heart would shrink into a ball whenever she thought about it. If she could, she wanted to completely delete this memory from her mind and never remember it again. If she was in the modern world, she would probably go to a psychiatrist. However, she could not do that in this era. She could only endure it by herself. Every time she woke up from a nightmare, she would repeatedly tell herself that it was all in the past and that she should not be afraid anymore. She realized that she was really afraid. She was really afraid. Every time she woke up from a nightmare, her whole body would tremble in fear. She forced herself to pull herself together and to let go completely. Therefore, these days she never thought about anything related to Shinjuli. Every time his image appeared in her mind, she would quickly slap it back. In this way, she did not even consider the reason why Shinjuli would cook her. Her first reaction when she saw him was the part where he threw her into the copper cauldron. She could not help but be bitter and angry. Everything she did was too extreme. And this time she woke up from a nightmare again. As usual, she hugged her knees and sat for a while, waiting for those negative emotions to slowly calm down. At first she refused to think about it. Now she finally forced herself to endure the discomfort and think about it again. Therefore, the words that Shinjuli said when he was cooking her echoed clearly in her ears for the first time. She clenched her fists so tightly that her fingertips dug into her flesh. She didn't even realize it. Shinjuli. She softly spat out these 3 words in the dark night. This name was like a sharp thorn engraved in her heart that could not be touched. Once touched, her heart would tremble in pain. Are you really doing this for my own good? Boiling me alive was really just an exorcism? Not to take revenge for the past life, not to avenge Wu Mo? If that's the case, why didn't you tell me beforehand? Why did you lock me up in the frost purgatory for so many days? Why did you disappear with Yunshi for a few days after raping me? In the dark night, everything was silent. Only her low voice trembled in the night. These days all she could think about was I have to give up, I have to forget, I have to walk out of this. But today her heart, which had been in complete despair, finally moved a little. She finally began to feel at a loss. She even had the urge to rush to the Sun Moon sect to find Shinjuli and force him to tell her the truth. She hugged her knees in the night and fell into deep thought. She did not realize that Shui Yilan had been lying on the roof for a long time. He was lying there for so long that the dew had wet his robe and his eyelashes. The starlight shone into his eyes, but it did not reflect any light. Chapter 1382. The next day Ning Xuema woke up with 2 dark circles under her eyes. She looked at herself in the mirror and frowned slightly when she saw her pale face. She closed her eyes and cast a spell on her face. The spell was pretty good. When a faint green light slowly slid across her face, the dark circles under her eyes disappeared. Her skin was flushed, her eyes were watery, and her lips were full. It was more magical than any makeup spell. No matter what, she didn't want others to see her dispirited. Therefore, she dressed herself up beautifully most of the time. This way she would appear to be in high spirits. She wore a red dress as usual today. The red dress was like fire and it made her skin look even brighter. After she finished tidying up, she was shocked when she opened the door. Shui Yilan was standing in front of her door and looking at her with a smile. Ning Xuemo raised her head and looked at the sky outside. She then looked at him. You're so early? Morning star was still there and the sky hadn't turned bright yet. You're even earlier than me. Shui Yilan smiled and held her hand. Let's go. Ning Xuemo subconsciously raised her hand and brushed her hair away. She took the opportunity to avoid his hand. Where are we going? Shui Yilan's hand slowly fell, but he didn't show anything on his face. Do you still want to stroll around Bulow City or do you want to go somewhere else? Let's go somewhere else. Ning Xuema walked out in large strides. I've strolled around enough here. All right, we'll do as you say. Shui Yilan's gaze was gentle. Momo, no matter where you go, I'll accompany you. Happy face, carrot. The road was filled with clouds and the future was boundless. Xuema, look. Isn't the scenery here different from below? Shui Yilan and Ning Xuema stood side by side in the void. The heavenly wind blew on their robes and made them look like tidal waves. Ning Xuema glanced at her surroundings. There were bright stars all around and they looked like diamonds. There was even a meteorite belt where she was standing. Meteorites of varying heights floated around them. They were like hills, giants, and monsters. This kind of scenery was very similar to looking at the scenery outside from a spaceship, and it was very different from looking at it from the mainland. In the past, when Shinjuli brought her around to cultivate, they often traveled through different spaces. However, her skills were too low at that time, so she had to be wrapped in a special enchantment before she could pass through these places. However, that special enchantment was milky white, so she couldn't see the scenery outside. She was extremely stifled inside and couldn't wait to pop her head out to see with him. However, Shinjioli had told her before that he wanted her to level up quickly. Once she reached level 8, he wouldn't need the wizardry barrier anymore. She had already reached Earth rank level 9 and was on her way to Heaven rank level 1. Unfortunately, Ning Xuema pursed her lips lightly and pushed the sudden memory back into the depths of her mind. She turned her head and saw Shuilan quietly looking at her. His eyes seemed to be surging with waves. Very beautiful. Ning Xuema finally spat out these 3 words. She smiled like a flower, making herself look more energetic as she continued to enjoy the scenery around her. Shuilan lifted his sleeve and gently hugged her slender waist. He tentatively lowered his head and kissed her forehead. Then I'll bring you out often in the future, okay? Momo. Xuema, when I first found this place, I fantasized that one day I would be able to stand side by side with you and watch the stars fall and the sun and moon change. Ning Xuema's body slightly stiffened. She was about to push him away, but Shuilan just kissed her and gently let her go. Chapter 1383. Ning Xuema's body stiffened slightly. She wanted to push him away, but Shuilan only kissed her and gently let her go. His eyes were still looking into hers. Momo, what do you think? Come here often in the future? Most likely. Okay. The 2 figures gradually went further and further away. Just as their figures disappeared into the distance, a white-robed figure appeared where they had been standing. The wind blew his clothes, making his figure look somewhat bleak. Shinjioli looked into the distance. The silhouette of the 2 people walking side by side was like a poisoned knife, slowly twisting into his heart. It was a clear pain. He lowered his eyes slightly and pulled the corners of his lips. A few days ago, when he was looking for the herbs to make the demon-vanquishing soup, he had also passed by this place. When he saw the beautiful scenery here, his first thought was to bring her here to enjoy the scenery in the future. However, he didn't expect that the one who brought her here to enjoy the scenery would not be him. It was another man. His stomach started to hurt again as if the wound had opened up again. It was so painful that it made him want to bare his fangs and brandish his claws. He didn't know how long he stood there. It was so long that the 2 figures could no longer be seen, as if they had really walked out of his world. Perhaps in the future he wouldn't be in her world anymore? He took a light breath. Shinjioli had never been a long-winded person. He did things directly and efficiently. Since he had said that he would let go, he shouldn't be entangled here and look for trouble. He slowly turned around. He found a direction opposite to theirs and resolutely left. Xuema, what are you looking at? Shuilan and Ning Xuema were currently walking through a meteorite belt. Far in the distance, there was a dark blue planet surrounded by milky white clouds. It was a beautiful sight to behold from where they were. It looked like looking at the Earth from outer space. It actually made Ning Xuema's eyes a little dry, and a trace of homesickness rose in her heart. If she landed on that planet now, would she be able to go home? Would she be able to return to her own era? Back then, after she had transmigrated, she had discussed with Tom about finding an immortal or simply becoming an immortal herself and transmigrating back to her own time. After that, too many things happened, and her desire to go home faded. Now that this thought was born, it spread like a prairie in her heart. She looked at the planet, and the strange feeling in her heart grew stronger, as if something was calling her from there. She couldn't help but fly a few steps forward. Almost at the same time, a huge whirlpool suddenly appeared under her feet. This whirlpool appeared so suddenly that Ning Xuema was not prepared at all. Her body was immediately pulled into the whirlpool and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Momo. Shuilan turned pale with fright. This place was a spacetime crevice, and the aura was extremely chaotic. There were many such spacetime crevices that allowed people like them to come and go freely. If he wasn't careful, he would fall into one of them and never find his way home again. He shouldn't have let go of her hand. Almost without thinking, he followed suit and jumped down as well. Even if he got lost, he wanted to get lost with her. He would never let her be alone again. Coarse sand and stones covered the entire land, and the fierce wind blew from one end to the other. The turbulent sea raged around the island, setting off waves that were several feet high. The sky was covered with dark clouds, and from time to time, there were flashes of lightning, followed by heavy rain. Chapter 1384. All of this was the scenery that Ning Xuema was currently standing on. It was desolate, cold, and uninhabited. Not long after Ning Xuema landed on the ground, she understood that this place was a dead land. There were no signs of human habitation, nor were there any other living creatures. There wasn't even a single weed. Perhaps it was because of the frequent heavy rain, but the surface of the ground was riddled with holes. The exposed rocks on the ground were carved into all kinds of strange shapes by the rain blades. They stood there silently, looking like they had been through the vicissitudes of life. Ning Xuema stood on a rock. The rain raged around her, but when it was about to fall on her, it bounced off as if it had hit a barrier. It was obvious that there was a rainproof barrier around her. Ning Xuema looked at the sea not far away and saw Shui Yilan emerging from the turbulent sea. Momo. Shui Yilan's figure rose and floated to her side. He sized her up from head to toe, and only after confirming that she was all right did he feel relieved. He looked around again and frowned slightly. This place is not a place for people to stay. Shall we leave? Ning Xuema shook her head slightly and only said 3 words, let's wait and see. Then she strode forward. With their current skills, it was easy to leave this dead land. However, when Ning Xuema landed, she had a very strange feeling. It was as if there was something calling out to her in this place, making her heart sink. Shui Yilan naturally wouldn't disobey her. He walked side by side with her and took a few steps forward. In such a desolate place there might be some ferocious creatures hiding in the dark. If he moved forward a little, he could protect her from any possible harm. Momo, what do you want to see? Shui Yilan was a little puzzled. Ning Xuema and he had been running in this broken place for almost 2 hours. Along the way they saw only stones and stones. There was no other scenery at all. Of course they didn't encounter any attacks. Besides the 2 of them, there was no other living creature on this planet. This place is a bit strange, Ning Xuema frowned. Lan Shan, don't you have a very strange feeling? Shui Yilan sensed for a bit, but he only sensed that this place was a land of death and nothing else. This place shouldn't be inhabited and there shouldn't be any other species. It's not suitable for living. Shui Yilan said honestly. At the very least there was no oxygen here. He and Ning Xuema had to rely on spells to maintain their breathing. Ning Xuema paused for a moment. Shui Yilan was relatively sensitive to external objects. Since he didn't feel anything, was there something wrong with her 6th sense? Or was she the only one who could feel the calling? Suddenly, an indescribable fear rose in her heart. It seemed that if she continued to explore, a huge secret would surface. What's wrong? Shui Yilan held her hand. Her hand was slightly cold and there seemed to be cold sweat in her palm. Nothing. Ning Xuema took a deep breath and calmed her mind. Let's continue walking. She had reached this point in her life. She was no longer afraid of any big secret that could threaten her. She wasn't even afraid of death. What was there to be afraid of? She had always been a rash person. Since she had decided on something, she would do it without restraint. She once again sprinted forward, and Shui Yilan naturally followed her closely. The calling became more and more obvious. It was as if there were stones superimposed on her heart. Her heart became heavier and heavier. Finally, Ning Xuema's footsteps suddenly stopped. Her gaze landed on a cliff in front of her. Chapter 1385. Shui Yilan naturally looked over as well, then stiffened. There was actually a coffin suspended in the air above the cliff in front of them. The coffin was black, dark and gloomy without any luster. Hanging there all alone, it gave off a feeling of desolation and vicissitudes. This was a land of death without any living creatures, nor were there any traces of human activity. How could there be such a coffin out of thin air? Who was inside the coffin? Ning Xuema's eyes were also fixed on the coffin. She was already very sure that the indescribable summoning was coming from inside the coffin, causing her heart to tighten. Her hands and feet were somewhat cold and her legs were stiff. For a moment she didn't have the courage to rush over. Shui Yilan's eyes also fell on the coffin, and his pupils slightly shrank. Soul coffin. The dark coffin, which was made of an unknown material, was actually condensed using an ancient forbidden soul technique. A coffin condensed using this soul technique could ensure that the corpse inside wouldn't rot for 10,000 years. However, this soul technique also had a special characteristic. Although this kind of coffin could preserve the corpse, it could also place a curse on the owner of the corpse inside. The person inside had to endure 1,000 years of wind and rain, and their soul couldn't reincarnate. Even if they did, their fate would be extremely miserable. All kinds of bad luck, all kinds of bad luck, all kinds of bad luck generally didn't have a good ending. Shui Yilan's fingers in his sleeves suddenly trembled slightly. In his impression, there weren't many people who knew this kind of curse technique. It was a secret technique of the demon realm that couldn't be passed on. Moreover, it could only be done by a third-level Heaven Realm expert. And in the Demon Realm, there were only 3 people who had reached this level in the past. Himself, Shui Yimo, and the Demon Ancestor. Shui Lan looked at Ning Xuema beside him, and a bad premonition suddenly arose in his heart. She was the reincarnation of Shui Yimo, and also had the fate of being a star of calamity plagued by disasters. Could it be that inside this coffin was the corpse of Shui Yimo, whom he had been searching for all these years? In the end, who killed Shui Yimo and used this kind of curse technique to seal her here? Who would hate her so much? In the past, after he was sealed, what in the end happened that caused Shui Yimo's tragic death? He stared at the coffin, unable to move for a moment. Thousands of thoughts flashed through his mind, and his hands and feet turned cold. He watched as Ning Xuema walked forward step by step as if she was being summoned. He couldn't help but turn pale. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but no words came out. Perhaps this was the truth that he had painstakingly searched for. But now, his beloved had finally returned to his side. He only wanted to make good use of the present. He didn't want to investigate the truth of the past anymore. If Ning Xuema knew the truth of what happened that year, she was afraid that Shui Yilan didn't dare to think about it anymore. That's it. That's it. It was summoning him. Ning Xuema made up her mind and pulled Shui Yilan's arm. Lan Shan, let's go up and take a look. She turned her head and saw that Shui Yilan's face was unusually pale. His eyes were also staring at the coffin. He seemed to be sad, happy, fearful, and expectant. His white jade-like forehead was dripping with sweat, and his expression was unprecedentedly strange. What's wrong? Ning Xuema was astonished. Shui Yilan's arms stiffened, and the expression in his eyes changed intensely. Finally, he focused on Ning Xuema's face. Momo, do you want to change your fate of being a star of calamity? Ning Xuema nodded. Yes. Shui Yilan slightly closed his eyes. Good. Then let's go take a look. Chapter 1386. Shui Yilan closed his eyes and said, All right. Let's go take a look. He seemed to have made up his mind. Without any hesitation, he pulled Ning Xuema and flew towards the coffin. The place where the coffin was hung was neither the sky nor the ground. It was right in the middle of a tall mountain peak, on a small platform that protruded out. The coffin occupied the entire platform and there was no place to stand. Birds would find it difficult to fly over, and monkeys would find it difficult to climb over. Fortunately, the 2 of them could stand even if they were suspended in the air, so it wasn't a problem for them to climb up. Ning Xuema floated next to the coffin and looked down at it. She felt a little conflicted. There were complicated starry patterns on the coffin lid, and a faint red light flowed through the patterns. It was mysterious and ancient. This coffin wasn't an ordinary coffin. It seemed like something was sealed inside. Could it be that another monster like Shui Yilan was sealed inside? Back then, she had opened Shui Yilan's crystal coffin in a fit of excitement. In the end, it was like opening Pandora's box. Countless troubles came pouring out. What about this coffin? She looked at it carefully. The entire coffin seemed to be overflowing with sadness. When Ning Xuema got close to it, she felt extremely depressed. The coffin wasn't transparent, so the 2 of them couldn't see what was inside. Shui Yilan touched the coffin lid, and his face became even paler. His fingers tightened. He wanted to open the coffin lid, but he didn't have the courage to do so. Ning Xuema hesitated for a moment. Subconsciously, she felt that she should open the coffin. Finally, she put her hand on the coffin lid, wanting to see the patterns first. Shui Yilan opened his mouth and raised his hand as if to stop her. However, he couldn't raise his hand and put it down. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was God who arranged for her to come here. Maybe it was to let her regain her true self. Just as Ning Xuema's hand was placed on top of the coffin lid, the incomparably heavy and mysterious coffin lid started to ripple under her hand. The red light from the decorative pattern also revolved around her hand at high speed. My head hurts. He had a splitting headache. Countless things crazily swarmed into her body through her arm. Her face turned pale and she subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand. However, her fingers seemed to be glued to it and she couldn't lift them no matter how hard she tried. She felt dizzy as countless memory fragments spun madly in her mind. Scenes of the past, scenes of memories played in her mind like a movie. She finally saw Shui Yimo again, but this time she was no longer a spectator, but a true character. It was only at this moment that she suddenly realized that she had once dreamed about Shui Yimo. The bitter, spicy, sour, sweet and salty experiences of Shui Yimo swirled in her heart, as if she had personally experienced them. Scenes flashed through his mind. Some were as clear as yesterday, while others were as blurry as clouds. Shui Yimo, the daughter of the devil ancestor, and Shui Yitong's twin sister. Because only one person could inherit the devil ancestor made the two girls kill each other. In the end, Shui Yimo won and became the successor of the devil ancestor. It wasn't until the moment she became the devil ancestor's successor that she finally knew one of the devil ancestor's secrets. The devil ancestor's inheritance was very special. When the devil ancestor's successor cultivated to a certain level, the devil ancestor would give half of his devil chi to her. At that time, the successor could find a man to marry. Chapter 1387. Because of the special devil chi in her body, the man who married her would consume his telekinesis during intercourse with her again and again, and she would absorb it. The man would become weaker and weaker while she would become stronger and stronger, and her skills would also become higher and higher. As the husband of the devil ancestor's successor, he had to have the awareness of being a male praying mantis. After the devil ancestor's successor became pregnant, the successor's temperament would change greatly. She would completely tear her man apart and swallow him into her belly. Only in this way could she give birth to the next generation of twins and pass down the devil ancestor's legacy. The old devil ancestor would pass down the last half of his power after the birth of the next generation's successor, and then disappear between heaven and earth. According to the convention of the devil world, after Shui Yimo became the successor, the devil ancestor would choose the strongest man in both the devil world and the devil world to be her husband. Shui Yimo was unwilling to accept this fate of being manipulated, but she was powerless to change it. Fortunately, the devil world's talents had withered in those years, and the devil ancestor hadn't chosen a husband for her, which allowed her to breathe a little. Later she met Shuilan. She knew that Shuilan liked her, but she didn't dare to like him. Shuilan was the only person she could rely on and trust in this icy devil palace. She didn't want him to become her husband and become a sacrifice. Therefore, every time Shuilan expressed his feelings to her openly or secretly, she would casually reject him. She only wanted him to be her friend. Later, in order to save her, Shuilan was seriously injured by Shinjioli's zither, and his life was hanging by a thread. The devil ancestor told her that in order to save Shuilan, she had to obtain the heart blood of a god as a primer within a year. Shui Yimo had no other choice. After weighing the pros and cons several times, she deliberately made a ruse and let herself fall into the hands of those she bought in advance. After going through untold hardships, she successfully mixed in with Shinjioli's side. Because of her pestering, Shinjioli's initial indifference to her gradually turned into pampering. And here she tasted the taste of being pampered and the beauty of love. She also lived like a real girl. She knew how to cry, laugh, act spoiled, and be unreasonable. Only when she was by Shinjioli's side did she feel like she was living under the sun. She no longer felt sad because of the bloody killings that popped up from time to time. Her feelings for Shinjioli were very strange. In the beginning, he was the hidden sunshine in her heart. Later on, he almost killed her only friend, Shuilan. She started to hate him. When she first came to his side, everything she did was just an act for that one purpose. However, she didn't know when she really fell in love with Shinjioli. By the time she realized this, it was already too late. And Shinjioli was really good to her, almost spoiling her to the heavens. The year she spent by his side was the happiest year of her life. She even had the thought of staying by his side for the rest of her life. She began to feel conflicted, hesitant, and uneasy, and the devil ancestor often secretly sent people to contact her, threatening her with Shuilan's life to force her to make a move. Shui Yimo, through a series of indirect inquiries and overt and covert inquiries, knew that the lifespan of a god was endless. He couldn't be killed. Even if his heart was dug out, he wouldn't die. At most, he would be seriously injured. Knowing this, Shui Yimo finally steeled her heart and decided to make a move. The last chaotic battle between immortals and devils was incited by the devil ancestor. At that time, Ning Shuama was by Shinjioli's side. Chapter 1388. The final battle between the immortals and devils was instigated and provoked by the devil ancestor. Ning Shuama was by Shinjioli's side. Taking advantage of the fierce battle between him and the devil ancestor, she deliberately let herself be captured by the devil ancestor. Taking advantage of the time when Shinjioli came to save her, She stabbed her sword into Xinjiuli's chest and finally took the blood from his heart. The moment the blood flowed out, Shui Yimo's face paled, and her heart felt like it was being twisted. When Xinjiuli unwillingly asked her, "Was everything just an act?" she cruelly answered, "Yes." Because she knew that after she stabbed her sword, it was impossible for them to be together again. That love was like a flower in the water or the moon in the fog. Once it was scattered, and it was irretrievable. Even if Xinjiuli was willing to forgive her in the future, she still didn't want to return to his side. Because she knew the demonic nature of her body, she didn't want to implicate even Shui Yilan, let alone Xinjiuli. After she took the blood from his heart, she didn't hesitate to slap him away. Although it seemed fierce, she still had a sense of propriety. She wouldn't make things worse for him. The place where he was slapped away was also a place where there were many people in the immortal world. She felt that even if he suffered such a serious injury, he should have enough ability to protect himself. Even if a devil soldier or devil general took the opportunity to attack him, they wouldn't succeed. She didn't expect the devil ancestor to attack again. She also didn't expect that Xinjiuli didn't use psychokinesis to protect himself at that time. She looked on helplessly as the devil ancestor flew out a highly poisonous knife silk and stabbed into Xinjiuli's heart. The purplish-red blood that followed stung her eyes, and her heart felt as if it had been stabbed by a knife. She subconsciously wanted to rush back to check on him, but the devil ancestor's soft rope wrapped around her waist and pulled her into the palanquin. From the palanquin, she finally saw Long Chuan risking his life to save Xinjiuli on the battlefield and fleeing far away. In that battle, the demons won a great victory. Meanwhile, Shui Yimo was also flattered by the group of devils. She was too lazy to pay attention to them and immediately went to see the devil ancestor. Naturally, she also went to see Shui Yilan. It wasn't easy for her to get the heart blood of a god. She wanted to personally feed it to Shui Yilan. What she didn't expect was that when she carefully carried the bottle of heart blood to the demon alpha's residence, she saw Shui Yilan, who had completely recovered from his injuries. At that moment, she felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She stood there and watched as Shui Yilan walked towards her with a smile, unable to react. The blood bottle in her hand was easily taken away by the demon ancestor. In the darkness, she could only hear the greedy swallowing sound. The demon ancestor praised her and said that she was a hero who had eliminated a strong opponent in the demon world. His voice was full of pride. He then told her with a smile that Shui Yilan had already woken up half a year ago. It was just that his injuries hadn't healed yet and he had been quietly recuperating in the demon palace. In the end, the demon ancestor didn't forget to show off to Shui Yimo, "Look at how good this lord is to you. In order to save this subordinate of yours, this lord spent a lot of effort. This bottle of blood is your compensation to this lord. Now this lord has given you a lively and healthy him. Are you satisfied?" Shui Yimo finally understood that all of this was just a trap set up by the demon ancestor. A trap for her to assassinate Xinjiuli. At this time, Shui Yimo could only grit her teeth and swallow her pride. She woodenly said that she was satisfied and slowly walked out, leaving Shui Yilan hanging there. She knew that it was impossible for her and Xinjiuli to be together. She knew that in the battle between the immortal Dao and the demon Dao, for the sake of victory and defeat, both sides would use tricks. Chapter 1389. She knew that she should completely let go of Xinjiuli. From now on, he would walk his own path and she would walk her own path. Her future path was to be a cold-blooded and emotionless devil ancestor. She would copy the path of the previous devil ancestor and reproduce from generation to generation. She knew all of this, but when she truly let go, she would no longer be able to see him when she opened her eyes every day. She would no longer be able to jump around beside him. She would no longer be able to eat the fish he roasted, the food he cooked, the tea he brewed. She would no longer be able to hear him call her Momo. Only then did she know that the pain of yearning was unbearable. She fell seriously ill. Every day when she closed her eyes, she would see his eyes that seemed to be able to see through everything, but also seemed to be deathly still. Shui Yilan came here almost every day to watch over her, but she didn't want to pay attention to him. Every time she saw Shui Yilan, she would think of the stupid things she had done. Her heart would hurt even more and she would feel even more sad. While she was sick, she also heard that the devil world had taken the opportunity to attack the immortal world several times. Every time they won a great victory. The immortal world's vitality was greatly damaged, while the devil world's morale was high. Then she inadvertently heard from a devil general that Xinjiuli had died. At that moment she felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Naturally, she didn't believe it. She thought that at most he would fall seriously ill and his power would decrease a bit. He was a god, how could he die from a stab to the heart? However, the devil ancestor had appeared at some point and earnestly told her that her constitution was the best weapon to kill a god. After Shinjuli joined with her, although the devil chi in her body wouldn't weaken him to the point of death, it would make his god body undergo a huge change. Within a year, his body would be in a half-human, half-god state, and his power would also decrease greatly. After a year, he would be able to slowly cultivate and adjust back. Within 3 years, he would regain his god body and he would still be invincible in the world. Although his power wasn't weak in his half-human, half-god state, his body was still afraid of being injured. If his heart was stabbed, he would still die. What's more, the sword that Shui Yamo used to kill him was specially made. It was called the God-slaying sword. The moment the sword was inserted, the first thing to be destroyed was not the heart, but the body. In addition, Demon Alpha wanted to kill Shinjuli completely. She used her extremely poisonous knife silks to make up for it. She took advantage of the situation to crush Shinjuli's heart. That's why Shinjuli must be dead. The demon realm has finally gotten rid of such a huge threat. Momo, your contribution cannot go unnoticed. The devil ancestor concluded with these words. Seeing that Shui Yamo was still in a daze, the devil ancestor laughed out loud and finally disappeared with satisfaction. Shui Yamo's mind rumbled. When she finally reacted, she turned her head and saw Shui Yilan standing not too far away. His red robe danced in the dark night like a flame of despair. Momo, is this true? For the sake of the devil world, you really gave your body to that man. This was the first time Shui Yilan, who had always been calm and gentle to her, spoke so sharply to her. Shui Yamo closed her eyes. She didn't want to answer him and she didn't want to explain. In her heart, it was the stupidest thing in the world and she wished she could erase it from her life. She was even more tired of living in the demon palace. Of course, she didn't see Shinjuli's corpse with her own eyes. She didn't believe that he was really dead. She didn't give up and still held on to a tiny bit of hope. She finally found an opportunity to sneak out of the demon realm and sneaked into Shinjuli's former residence. However, she only saw desolation. Shinjuli and Long Chuan were nowhere to be found. Chapter 1390. She didn't give up and went to the illusory castle. That place was also cold and cheerless. She didn't see a single person and there were still remnants of his aura in the air. Shui Yamo sat blankly on the cloud bed for a moment. Her heart was uncomfortably empty, as if she had stepped on the edge of a cliff. Only her heart was left to fall into hell. Longing was like weeds. Once it grew, it would spread and become a disaster. She began to use all kinds of connections, openly and secretly inquiring about Shinjuli's whereabouts, but no one knew. Shinjuli seemed to have really disappeared from this world. No one could find any trace of him or find his whereabouts. Shui Yamo stood in the boundless world, not knowing where to go for a while. The more she couldn't find him, the more she wanted to find him. In the end, she simply searched crazily, and her footprints went to every corner of the 3 realms. She told herself that she only wanted to confirm whether he was dead or alive. As long as he was alive, as long as she could confirm that he was alive, she could leave with peace of mind. Even if the 2 of them became enemies from now on, there would still be a chance to meet. It was always better than nothing. Perhaps the heavens were grateful for her heart, but she finally received a piece of news that she didn't know whether it was true or false. Shinjuli had been brought back to the Qilin clan by Long Chuan. After a series of hardships inconvenient for outsiders, she finally found the always mysterious Qilin clan. Then she secretly sneaked in. When she was with Shinjuli, she hid her strength. In the eyes of the people of the immortal world, she was a seductive vixen. Her ability to charm people was amazing, but her actual ability wasn't much. In the past year, Shinjuli had taught her a lot of martial arts, such as the art of breaking enchantments and some cultivation techniques. Other techniques weren't of much use to her this time, but breaking barriers allowed her to avoid the patrols of the Qilin clan. Quietly, she entered the most secret and core secret room of the Qilin clan. Here she finally saw the Shinjuli that she had yearned for day and night. He was lying there quietly, motionless with a snow-white complexion. She slowly walked over, her whole body trembling. Step by step, she walked to his side. Then she stretched out her trembling hand to check his aura. The moment she touched his wrist, her heart completely sank into an icy abyss. His body was cold and stiff, lying there like a statue without any signs of life. The rumors in the outside world were not wrong. He was really dead. Shui Yamo could no longer stand. She fell down in front of his chilled jade couch, one of her hands tightly gripping his, unwilling to let go. His vision turned black, and he felt as if he was drowning, unable to breathe. She sat there for an unknown amount of time before she finally sat up as if she had suddenly realized something. She unbuttoned his shirt and saw the wound on his chest. There was a bloody hole there, and his heart was shattered beyond recognition. She trembled as she hugged his waist, desperately transferring her psychokinesis to him. Shinjuli had taught her how to heal wounds caused by swords and knives. He had even used his psyche power to heal her. The method she used was exactly what Shinjuli had taught her. Every time Shinjuli used it on her, she could see her wound heal very quickly. After she learned it, she had once looked for an opportunity to test it on Shinjuli. Seeing the small wound she had bitten on his finger heal at a speed visible to the naked eye, it showed that she had already mastered this technique. Chapter 1391. But when she used it on Shinjuli, it didn't have any effect. She channeled her psychokinesis until she was dizzy. The bloody hole was still a bloody hole, shining brightly and stinging her eyes. She didn't know how long she tossed around beside him. In the end, she simply hugged his hand, trying to use her body temperature to warm him up. She tossed around until Long Chuan, who was guarding Shinjuli's corpse, returned. She didn't want to face Long Chuan anymore, so she promptly turned invisible and left. She began to inquire about various methods of reviving people in the three realms. Finally, she heard that the moonlight flute, which was produced by the Immortal Kingdom, was made from moonlight iron. Once it was blown, it could gather souls and bring people back to life. Thus, she went to the Immortal Kingdom and searched for moonlight iron on the mountain for more than a month without rest. Finally, she found a piece of moonlight iron that could be used to make a moonlight flute. She handed it to the blacksmith there, asking him to forge it for her. Making a moonlight flute was very time-consuming. She made an appointment with the blacksmith and left. Then she returned to the immortal demon continent to see if there were any other methods. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, she wouldn't give up. She just didn't expect that there would be an even bigger accident waiting for her. She had just returned to the Immortal Kingdom when she met Shui Yilan. For more than a month, she had been running around incognito. Even the people of the demon world couldn't find a trace of her. Only Shui Yilan, who was the only one who understood and knew her, was familiar with her aura, and was familiar with her way of hiding, so he found her. After not seeing each other for only a few months, Shui Yilan had also lost a lot of weight. In the wilderness he stood there wearing a big red robe looking at her. "Momo, you've lost weight." Shui Yilan's feelings were very complicated. Subconsciously, she still didn't want to see Shui Yilan again. Because when she saw him, she would think of the sword she stabbed Shinjuli with. She faintly nodded to him and prepared to leave. Shui Yilan spoke from behind her. "Momo, he's already dead. Can you forget him? Let's start over, okay?" Shui Yimo didn't pay attention to him, and didn't even stop her footsteps. There were some things that couldn't be forgotten or let go just like that. He's a god, not a human. If he's dead, he's dead. He can't be revived with the moonlight flute. "You're just wasting your efforts," Shui Yilan said. Shui Yimo turned around to look at him, her face slowly turning pale. "You know that I made the moonlight flute? Did you do something behind my back again?" Shui Yilan looked at her with a hint of hurt in his eyes. "Momo, do you not trust me that much? If I wanted to play tricks on the moonlight flute, I wouldn't tell you now." Shui Yimo let out a sigh of relief. Shui Yilan smiled bleakly. "Momo, don't tell me you don't even trust me now? No matter what, I won't harm you." Shui Yimo pursed her lips. "No, I trust you." In this world, the only person she trusted was him. "Momo, let's find a place to sit down. I want to talk to you." Shui Yilan's eyebrows relaxed. He walked over and held her hand as usual. "Maybe I can help you a little." Shui Yimo took a step back to avoid him. When she heard his last sentence, her eyes lit up. "You have a way?" Shui Yilan slowly let go of his empty hand and sighed. "Maybe. Let's find a place to rest first. I'll tell you in detail." Chapter 1392. He looked at her with a gentle gaze. "Momo, you're as pale as a ghost right now. You must rest first." Shui Yimo couldn't persuade him, so she naturally didn't give up any hope. She found a restaurant with him and asked for a private room, chatting while eating. During their conversation, Shui Yimo learned that the demon world was in chaos because of her departure. She didn't know how many people the demon ancestor had sent out to look for her. He was also sent by the demon ancestor. Shui Yilan asked her if she would never return to the demon world. Shui Yimo's reply was straightforward. If I can't resurrect him, I will never return. Shui Yilan was slightly sad. So you really like him that much? But even if you resurrect him, so what? Even if he resurrects, I'm afraid he won't forgive you. Why are you so persistent? Shui Yimo didn't want to answer his question. Right now, she only wanted to resurrect Xinjiuli. She didn't care about anything else. She looked at Shui Yilan. You came to find me just to talk about this? I still have things to do. Just as she was about to say goodbye, Shui Yilan finally sighed. Momo, sit down and listen to me. Have you heard of the whirling ginseng fruit? Shui Yimo was somewhat at a loss. She had heard of the whirling ginseng fruit and the whirling ginseng fruit, but she had never heard of it. But now that Shui Yilan mentioned it, there must be a reason, so she sat down again. From Shui Yilan's words, she knew that the whirling ginseng fruit was a sacred fruit that grew in the forbidden land of ice and snow. It bore fruit once every 3,000 years, one at a time. It looked like a human heart and was called the heart of God. It could resurrect all living things in the three realms. Finally, Shui Yilan explained to her. Of course, this thing is extremely rare. It's hard to say whether it has this function or not. Moreover, the place where the whirling ginseng fruit grows is guarded by ancient mythological beasts. It's not easy to get close. He mentioned a lot of difficulties. Shui Yimo only asked one question. Where is this forbidden land of ice and snow? Shui Yilan clenched his fists. Momo, you have to understand that your martial arts body is of the fire attribute, while that place is of the water attribute. The danger there is beyond your imagination. Perhaps you will lose your life before you reach the tree. Even if you risked your life to defeat those mythological beasts, the fruits on the tree might not have grown yet, or they might not have matured yet. Even if you risked your life, you might not get anything. At the very least, even if you go through all the hardships to get that fruit, you might not be able to resurrect Xinjiuli. I think you should think about it carefully. Is it worth it to go there? Shui Yimo's expression didn't change. She still asked the same question. Where is this forbidden land of ice? In her heart, there was no such thing as whether it was worth it or not. Shui Yilan looked at her for a long time. Finally, he closed his eyes and smiled bitterly. I knew it, this would be the result. Momo, I'll take you there. I've been there before. As expected, Shui Yilan took her to the forbidden land of ice and snow. It was a place comparable to the North and South Poles. Ice and snow covered the entire earth. Ice towers and icebergs could be seen everywhere. The cold here wasn't in the ordinary sense. Every wind that blew here seemed to drill into a person's bones, freezing them from the depths of their marrow to the outside. Even if she used psychokinesis, it wouldn't help. She could only rely on her origin flame to warm herself. Not only was it cold, but there were also all kinds of vicious beasts. Shui Yimo's whole body was frozen stiff. Chapter 1393. Shui Yimo's whole body was frozen stiff. She and Shui Yilan worked together to kill all kinds of monsters that attacked her. After untold hardships, they finally found the dancing tree. Under the dancing tree there was a huge swan and eye wandering around. This mythological beast was like a trap. Only by killing this mythological beast could they see the ginseng fruit on the dancing tree. Shui Yimo didn't hesitate to fight with the swan and eye. Shui Yilan naturally joined in, but halfway through the fight, he suddenly fell into a crack in the ground and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Shui Yimo wanted to pull him back, but she couldn't. She could only watch him disappear into the crack. Fortunately, she knew that Shui Yilan wouldn't die. With his martial arts, even if he was buried alive, he could come out again. So she couldn't save him in time because the swan and eye was still fighting her. Once provoked, the swan and eye would fight with all its might, unless she gave up on the ginseng fruit and escaped. But once she escaped, all her previous efforts would be wasted. At this time, Shui Yimo could only fight with all her might against the ancient mythological beast alone. It was the most difficult battle in history. Shui Yimo's whole body was covered in wounds. Her bones could be seen and blood kept flowing out. The mythological beast also didn't have any advantage, and its injuries were more serious than hers. 3 days and 3 nights of fierce fighting. The swan and eye was ferocious and had thick blood. Even Xinjiuli had to spend a lot of effort to defeat it, let alone Shui Yimo, whose martial arts were far inferior to his. Shui Yimo didn't know how many times she had faced life and death in this fierce battle, but she had broken through. She also had many opportunities to escape, but she chose to give them all up. The only thing she didn't give up was the dancing ginseng fruit. She had already disregarded life and death. Even if she had to risk her life, she had to get the dancing ginseng fruit. This was her only hope. Even the most tyrannical were afraid of those who didn't care about their lives. Finally, on the third night, the huge mythological beast fell to the ground with a loud bang under Shui Yimo's sword. Shui Yimo was also like a lamp that had run out of oil. Her entire body was bathed in blood, and her vision was turning black. However, she was still holding on, waiting for the moment when the barrier would open. The divine beast fell to the ground, and the barrier opened with a rumble. Sure enough, Shui Yimo saw a fruit that looked very much like a human heart on the swaying tree. It was bright red, as if it had already ripened. Shui Yimo was so excited that her whole body was almost trembling. She flew over to pick the fruit. The unforeseen event happened in that instant. Just as she was about to take the fruit, her heart suddenly turned cold. The tip of a silver-white sword protruded from her chest, reflecting a cold light under the moonlight. The tip of the sword suddenly twisted and pulled out, causing blood to splatter everywhere. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Shui Yimo, who was in the air, had no way of dodging and could only take this blow. She felt a sharp pain in her heart, and the intense pain caused her face to turn pale instantly. So this is what it feels like to be pierced through the heart. Who was it? In this snowfield, apart from her and Shui Yilan, who else could it be? Shui Yimo only felt that the strength in her body was rapidly drained away. However, she still picked the fruit without caring about it, protecting it in her arms as she staggered to the ground. Shui Yimo stood in front of her, laughing arrogantly. Shui Yimo, you lost. From now on, I am the devil ancestor. On the sword in her hand, drops of blood were rolling down. Shui Yilan stood beside Shui Yilan, silently looking at Shui Yimo. Shui Yimo looked at Shui Yilan, then looked at Shui Yimo, and understood everything. Chapter 1394. It turned out to be a meticulously planned plot, a plot of rebellion. Shui Yilan had lured her here, let her and the mythological beast fight until both sides were injured, and then Snowy Talisman would give her a fatal blow. Everyone was happy. So this was what it felt like to be betrayed, to be stabbed in the heart by someone you trusted. At that moment, she suddenly remembered the look in Shinjuli's eyes when he looked at her. At that time, was he also so desperate? Was he also so disheartened? She stood there with a pale face, leaning on her sword. She looked at Shui Yilan and then at Snowy Talisman. How did you come back to life? Snowy Talisman was very proud. She pulled Shui Yilan's sleeve, leaned her head on his chest and asked, "What do you think?" Snowy Mo's gaze slowly turned to Shui Yilan. Shui Yilan's face was pale. He pursed his thin lips and smiled. "Momo, you let me down first?" Snowy Talisman originally didn't die. She had been bitterly tortured in the blood purgatory under the devil ancestor's control. I accidentally found her and rescued her. Momo, she is more suitable than you to be the devil ancestor's successor. The devil ancestor also said that she is more suitable than you. He stared straight into Snowy Mo's eyes, a trace of madness in his eyes. Momo, do you hate me? Snowy Mo's chest was bleeding. Her heart was in pain. It was very painful. However, it was only an organ pain, not a heartache. She was only disappointed at being betrayed by her most trusted friend. Shui Yilan had imagined countless reactions from Snowy Mo, such as laughing at the sky, dying together with him, or going hysterical. But Snowy Mo only calmly looked at him. Her eyes were first filled with surprise and disbelief, then disappointment and anger, until finally there was only darkness left. In the end, she didn't say anything and slowly fell down. Blood flowed down her red dress to the ground. It dyed the ice field under her body red, like a red plum blossom blooming in the snow. It carried a sad and despairing aura. She slowly closed her eyes and no longer moved. Shui Yilan stood there like a fool for a moment, and suddenly walked towards her step by step. Momo? He gently nudged her. Shui Yimo remained motionless, but her complexion gradually turned pale, and her aura gradually weakened. Her wrist was held by Shui Yilan. Shui Yilan's fingers were colder than her wrist and even trembled a little. He seemed to be taking her pulse. A moment later, he suddenly raised his head to look at Snow-Robe Talisman. Snow-Robe Talisman, you've injured her soul root. The Snow-Robe Talisman laughed shrilly. So what? Since I survived, she must die. But you promised me that you wouldn't take her life. Sorry, I used too much force. Shui Yishio spread out his hands, his voice unconcerned. She smiled at Shui Yilan and said softly, Shui Yilan, this woman doesn't even put you in her eyes. You've done everything for her, but you're nothing in her eyes. She let you down, so why do you still care about her life? Actually, we are the most suitable couple. She doesn't deserve you. How about you be my royal husband in the future? If you and I join hands, we'll definitely bring glory to the demon realm. Although my martial arts aren't as good as yours, I have half of the demon ancestor's power. Once I absorb her, I'll become the real demon ancestor. My zither can sweep away everything. Shui Yilan, at that time the demon realm will be ours. Shui Yilan. His complexion became even paler. He didn't speak again but directly made his move. He raised his hand and directly used a big move on Snow Robe Talisman. Chapter 1395. He raised his hand and directly used a big move on the Snow Robe Talisman. A red light that could almost burn half the sky madly smashed towards the Snow Robe Talisman. Stop. Shui Yilan, you're crazy. You're crazy. What do you want to do? The Snow Robe Talisman angrily screamed, Don't forget, it was your idea to scheme against her. I didn't tell you to kill her. Snow Robe Talisman, I can save you and I can also send you back. Shui Yilan's voice was cold. Do you really think I'm not on guard against you? He didn't know what kind of move he used on the Snow Robe Talisman, but the Snow Robe Talisman suddenly screamed and was directly grabbed by Shui Yilan. His fingertips directly grabbed the Snow Robe Talisman's back and pinched her spine. The Snow Robe Talisman's complexion also changed and her voice became more and more shrill. Shui Yilan, what do you want to do? I'm now the only successor of the Devil Ancestor in the Devil Realm. If you kill me, the Devil Realm will be in imminent danger. Shui Yilan looked at the Snow Robe Talisman, who was desperately struggling, and revealed a sinister look. The Devil Realm? Without her, the Devil Realm is nothing. Snow Robe Talisman, I want you to be buried with her. His hand gradually tightened, and with a crisp crack, her spine was finally completely broken by Shui Yilan, and her head softly drooped down. Shui Yilan swung his hand and threw away the Snow Robe Talisman's corpse. He used a cleaning technique to clean his fingers, and then slowly picked up the lifeless Snow Robe Talisman on the ground, and pressed his face against hers. Momo, I'm sorry. Just as he said this, he suddenly stopped and his body stiffened. He looked at the Snow Robe Talisman in his arms, and his eyes widened in disbelief. Snow Robe Talisman didn't know when she opened her eyes, but the bottom of her eyes was blood red. Her sparkling jade-like palm hit his chest. Her movements were as fast as lightning, and Shui Yilan did not even have time to react. Shui Yilan's face instantly turned as white as snow. He looked down at her and said hoarsely, Momo, so, you didn't die. Shui Yimo didn't say anything. Instead, she pushed Shui Yilan away. Shui Yilan's body crashed into the swaying ginseng tree and slid down again. He violently coughed up blood, but his eyes were fixed on Shui Yilan's eyes. It was as if he had gone mad, but at the same time, it was something else. He wanted to say something, but when he opened his mouth, another mouthful of blood came out. Shui Yimo didn't pay any more attention to him. She was well aware that her palm strike was a secret technique of the Devil World's Devil Ancestor. The one struck by it would be thoroughly sealed, sink into a blood coffin and forever fall into hell. For all eternity, they would suffer the pain of being pierced by a blood blade, never to be free. This was the demon ancestor's cruelest punishment for traitors. It was also the demon ancestor's unique skill. Shui Yimo didn't expect that she would have to use this move on Shui Yilan. The wound on her chest burst open again, and blood flowed out continuously, but she didn't care at all. She staggered up and stretched out her palm. A pure black light was emitted and quickly climbed onto Snow Robe Talisman's body. Snow Robe Talisman's entire body melted at a speed visible to the naked eye. This was also a skill unique to the demon ancestor's successor. Once this skill was used, she would absorb Snow Robe Talisman and completely fall into the devil path. Shui Yilan, who was lying there gasping for breath, suddenly opened his eyes wide. Seeing this scene, his face changed greatly. Momo, don't. Shui Yimo still didn't pay attention to him. The black light in her palm gradually swallowed Snow Robe Talisman's body until there was nothing left. Shui Yilan's face was deathly pale. Momo. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.